Greetings, all. It's nice to see you. Thank you for being here. So great. And welcome to the Waiver Reimagine Advisory Task Force meeting of March 23rd, 2026. This is our sixth meeting together as a group and our fifth official task force meeting. So I'm always amazed at how quickly time passes. I am going to be a little heavy-handed in the startup because we have a lot to get through today. And so we've gone through our startups a few times now. So hopefully this is just a reminder and not like a whole reset. So I apologize for that. And there'll be a little more elbow room at different parts of the meeting today. But just as a reminder, this is a public meeting that's live streaming on YouTube. So that everything you'll say will be recorded and available to the public. So if you don't want your information made public, you could choose not to speak or provide comments afterwards. And by taking part of this meeting, you understand and accept that what you say is going to be public. So hopefully that's no surprise to anyone. And as a reminder, wow, I'm getting way better at WebEx and the sharing of screens, I think. So as a reminder, we are all here and agree on the importance of improving outcomes for people and ensuring that services are accessible, person-centered, and sustainable. And this is a shared commitment, even though we may differ in our perspectives on the best way forward. And as a reminder, because I need to do this every time, if you cannot see people's names underneath their picture, what you want to do is scroll up to view, and there should be a toggle switch that lets you toggle that. I think you're toggling it off, which reveals people's names. So for those of you with your cameras on, is that useful for me to remind you about that? Is that helpful? Okay, okay, great. So this is what is on our agenda for today. And we'll talk a little bit about the plan for the meeting. So by the end of this meeting, we want to have updates from DHS, an overview of the direction with regard to service menus, an overview of what's in and what's out of individual budgets. And I decided, Kala, as I was pulling this together today, or refining it today, that terminology is awful. So we're just going to have to really clarify what we mean by that. We want to just touch base on the status of Waiver Reimagine related legislation. We want to get updates from adjacent task force efforts, if there are any. We can get some updates, some of the work groups if you want those, and we want to have a plan for task force co-chair roles, which was targeted for April. So since it's the meeting before that, I want to give a heads up on that. Once again, we are shooting for B+, and our goal is understanding. We may not agree, but as long as we understand, we can be making progress. So we are, that changed, right? The PowerPoint changed for all of you? Okay. We're in startup mode right now. We're in like the welcome startup meeting logistics portion of the meeting. And then we're going to go almost immediately to status and updates from DHS. Planning on about a 10-minute break, maybe right around 2:30, but we'll follow the music of the meeting to give everybody a leg stretch. Then we'll take a deep dive into the service menus and what is in and out of individual budgets. As you can kind of see by the implied math here, that we'll probably do that for about an hour. And then take another leg stretch, just because we are here for a long time today. And then when we're back, that's when we'll start to do some of the updates on legislation, Waiver Reimagine, adjacent groups, task force work groups, and then start to plan for our next meeting, which is currently scheduled for April 20. And then if we don't adjourn earlier, there will be a hard stop for sure at 5 p.m. So let me pause there for a second and see if there's any questions or is anybody anticipating anything different from the meeting that I haven't outlined. And Katie, I'll ask your help keeping track of anything that might be posted in the chat related to that.
I'm not seeing anything, Fran.
Perfect, thank you. So I think we are actually on a regular basis really do quite well on this, but I do feel it's important to reiterate this. So a few grounding requests. The first is that we maintain a climate here of inquiry and listening and reflection. And my shorthand on that is always, we want to generate way more light than we do heat, right? So that's the spirit in which we work. I'm going to ask that we focus on understanding. And so that's about like asking deeper questions and then reflecting back what we're hearing or what we understand in order to make sure we're on track. We want to make sure that we share the airtime, and I'm going to ask your help in sort of bottom lining your points. And then if you've spoken recently, I'm going to ask your help in inviting others to step forward in that space. And I think I shared with you that one time I heard, I don't know if they still do it, but one time the Supreme Court justices had a rule that none of the justices spoke twice until everybody spoke once. So that is an ideal in this space, but there's so many of us, but let's try for that. I'm going to ask your help in practicing good virtual meeting behaviors. So if your camera works and you're comfortable with that, please turn it on. I appreciate the raise hand function, but also can see you on camera and can call on you if you're streaming your image that way. I'm going to ask that you minimize distractions. So if you need to turn your phone to mute or there's other things that are distracting for you, I'll ask your help with that. The other thing is we want to try to minimize, or you want to minimize the use of chat to the degree that we can in terms of the distraction quotient. The other thing is not everybody has easy access to chat because they're not able to see it. So we are going to use the chat to answer very specific questions. And so you all have been really great and respectful about that. So thank you for that. And I ask you to continue with that. And then we are pretty good at this, actually. I think we're getting better at this, but we'll minimize the use of acronyms and jargon. And I mean no disrespect, but I feel like I'm the weakest link when it comes to that. So if I don't understand what the letters mean, I may be a little heavy-handed and jump in and ask us to clarify what the terminology means. But I will let you know everybody's welcome to do that. If you think we're using jargon, let's slow it down to make sure we don't lose anybody who might not speak the language. So anybody who can't live with these ground rules? We're all good that way? Perfect. Okay, and I'm not going to read this list, but this is the stakeholder list from our December 2025 meeting, which was our first in-person meeting, and we generated a list of stakeholders to the Waiver Reimagine project. And we have 18 that we have identified, beginning with people who live with disabilities and their families, and ending with the general public, and 16 other ones in between. So we've got a number of folks, a number of perspectives that we're taking into consideration in our conversation. So let me see where I'm going next. Okay. So before we open the conversation up to DHS updates, there's something I want to name in this space. And I'm going to stop the share so I can see you all better. And I am going to ask you to put this in chat, and let me just flag it in the chat for myself here. And that is degree uncertain and not aligned. Okay, so here's my sense of one of the things that's happening on our shared landscape is that we are working together in a climate of uncertainty, disagreement, and oftentimes limited information. So that is my working assumption. So on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the highest, tell me where you think we fall into that category. So 10 would be, oh yeah, a ton of uncertainty, a ton of disagreement, and a lot of limited information. Where 1 would be the extreme, which is, oh, we are certain, we are aligned, and we have all the information we want. So a 10 is the worst case. So put your numbers in and let's just kind of see where the temperature of the group is. Ten, 7, 5, 5, 7, 7. This is so great. Thank you for doing it this way. So I hope to hear from everybody. 5, yep, 6, 5, another 5, 7. Perfect. We will capture that. 7, 7. Okay. So here's, and you feel free to keep putting your numbers in there, but that's super helpful to know that folks are sort of toward the middle and skewing a little bit towards that upper end. So here's what I am concerned about. I am concerned that we are on a complicated information landscape. And when official information is slow, overly technical, hard to access, people will default to informal networks. And that complicated landscape is fertile ground for misinformation and misunderstanding, which in many cases can be fear, right? And I am concerned about this as a shared concern. The other thing that I am aware of in this landscape is that how often experts disagree, right? So if somebody is speaking from a position of expertise, often experts disagree. So it isn't until we sort of get all the experts in the room that we can sort of sense make together. And I was thinking about what's the best example I can use for when experts disagree. And what came to mind for me is, I don't know if you all were paying attention to this, but in 2006, the planet Pluto was degraded from a like official planet to like a minor planet, like it lost its planetary status. And there was a whole big brouhaha because experts disagreed on whether or not Pluto was a planet. So this happens all the time, and we are in that kind of space. So I have a couple of requests. One is the more that we as individuals are aware of like what we're hearing or what I believe that may be coming from informal networks, then we can use that sort of assumption or whatever showing up to ask more questions. So we can ask questions like, how do we know this? How can I confirm it? What else might be true? Who do I need to double check this with? But I just get concerned that by the nature of the complexity and the uncertainty around Waiver Reimagine, we're in that kind of potential misunderstanding information space. Anyway, so being aware of what you believe you know, checking to see if that's actually what we know to be true, allowing space for different perspectives and asking a ton of questions. So I just wanted to name it because I'm seeing it show up in some conversations. And if I'm seeing it show up, I would imagine that you all are seeing it show up. So thank you for letting me set the stage on that. And let me see, do we have everybody here? Katie, is there anything you want to add to that at all?
Um, I would just clarify, Fran. I believe when you're talking about experts, you mean kind of a small e expert, so people with lived experience or different perspectives as well.
Totally, 100%. Like, because we've been here before, they're speaking from a position of experience and expertise that way. Yep. Yep. Thank you for that. That's awesome. Okay. Um, perfect. So Kella, are you ready for DHS updates?
Hi, everyone. I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. So, a reminder, I'm Kala Oftedal, Disability Services Division Deputy Director and an employee of Department of Human Services at the state of Minnesota. And um, as I usually do, I want to give an update. As I do every month at our task force meetings, want to give a high level updates about the project work, where we're at, some of the sticky points, things that have shifted, etc. And usually these are related to our timeline. So we'll get to the announcement that we as DHS made earlier today about a delay in Waiver Reimagine in just a bit, and we'll touch on that. But I want to start with some of the other elevate some of the other highlights pieces of the project that are underway. So starting with our new website. So for those, I don't think we've talked about it extensively here, but we will soon be launching a new website that we're anticipating to be up in the next few weeks. Our website is mindful that much of our design elements are getting in place, and we need to shift and think also about implementation. And so, as I think all of you on this call likely know, we have a current website for Waiver Reimagine. That website is planned to continue or will exist. We haven't updated it much lately. We do take down information that is no longer relevant. But with that, we are also launching a new website to come here soon. What I'm excited about with the new website, it will have a little bit of branding associated with it. So I think the cool thing about that is that it'll be easily recognizable about what items or topics are related to Waiver Reimagine and the Go Live. So I think there'll be language plus some visual cues that may be helpful to some around, again, what is really talking about Waiver Reimagine and the Go Live. The other piece that I think I would like to elevate as a feature of the website that is soon to launch is that there will be different areas within the website that are catered to specific audience groups, which I think is exciting. So, for those who are really interested in understanding it from a specific point of view or perspective, you may want to navigate to a specific area of the website that should be really concentrated on aspects of the work or of the project that impact that lens. And so, right now, it's planned that there will be a section of the website that's really specific for people and families who are participating or accessing our current disability waivers. Also, we will have on there an opportunity for our counties or tribes to have a specific area or section that again taps into what's really relevant for them. And then the third tier is our providers. So hopefully that's helpful in having more of a robust, kind of comprehensive understanding of all the different impacts and partners along the way. So I also want to talk about the legislative report. We've brought it up a few times to this group. And the legislative report, again, is a report that's due to Minnesota legislators, ahead of our CMS waiver plan submission to CMS. So our legislative report continues to be in its more final draft phases, if you will, where all the content is constructed. We are hoping to daylight that legislative report if it's of interest to one of the work groups within the task force to put eyes and ears on it and get some reflection on what's been drafted. So when that becomes available, we'll communicate that more to Fran, and Fran, helping to support and facilitate the work groups of the task force, can help us to daylight that if there's interest within this group. The next piece wanting to talk about more is, I talked about just a bit ago, the legislative report and it being submitted to legislature ahead of our waiver plan submission. to CMS. So two key updates in this realm is that our 30-day public comment period, we have done a further adjustment on the date for the 30-day public comment period. And over the last couple meetings, I think at least one or two meetings before this at the task force, I've identified that there is some added information that we need for our waiver applications, which is known as Appendix J, which takes into account some fiscal details or information. And for us to complete Appendix J to put into our waiver plan applications to be ready for the 30-day public comment period, as well as for us to submit it to CMS, we need some further information from HSRI. And so that further information from HSRI, as it's related to the methodology, will be shared with us in May of 2026. Once DHS gets our hands on it, we're able to do further analysis and understand fiscal impacts. Then we'll be able to complete that Appendix J, which is one section of our waiver applications. Then we'll go ahead and publish for a 30-day public comment period. And then subsequent to that will be our waiver plan submission to CMS. Right now, the 30-day public comment period is planned for late summer. So our target date is August 1, 2026. Our waiver plan submission is planned for October 1, 2026.
Hang on just a second, Kelly, because I'm just trying to keep up a little bit. So you said 30-day public comment is August 1, and then submission date, it was what?
10/1.
Okay, perfect.
And then I think those are all my very kind of technical, if you will, updates. I think the greater update that we want to have more dialogue around, and I think Moore is here as well as John Connolly here to be part of this conversation with us, is that I just want to elevate for the task force. We really appreciated over the past many months that you all have been together, is helping us to better understand to create better understanding and understanding the value and the need for us as DHS to communicate and get information shared with people. And so I think you've really helped to elevate and kind of turn a spotlight on the importance of that and how we can show up in a better way. And with that, I know that you all have shared, I think what was really enlightening for me, at least, March 13th, when we had the last task force meeting where we talked about the letter and the voting, but maybe not so much the votes around the letter, but maybe it was more around the added context that people added. Gretchen, I'm thinking specifically to kind of how you were able to help us better understand MAXA and that perspective upon the letter, but just broader terms, what your thoughts are about Waiver, Reimagine, and Go Live. That we're hearing you all, we're appreciating what you all are bringing to the conversation. And so, as you know, I've shared with you all more, Heidi, I've shared this over time, over the last couple months, there's been a lot of sticky points in the project that recently we've hit a bit of detours, if you will, in the project, and it has reflected in our project timeline. And when we come to you with these updates every month, you're seeing some shifts in the timeline as it relates to things that have gotten stuck. So just want to acknowledge that piece, sharing too, and I'll pass it over to Moore and John here in just a second. But if you have not yet seen, we can put it in the chat as well. But we did make an announcement earlier today about the delay of Waiver Reimagine. So we've made a decision, DHS has, to delay Waiver Reimagine. I will say there, if you haven't seen the communication, again, we'll throw it in the chat for you to see, but there were multiple factors, I think, if you will, right? And those are outlined in that letter and in that memo. And I think many of them, hopefully you felt that we've kept you apprised of over the last couple months about kind of where we're at within the project. So I think I will take the time then to pass it over to Moore and John, unless Katie or Fran, you have more that you want me to share out about updates or clarity.
I'm fine, Moore, if you want to take the floor. I'm not seeing John online yet, but Moore, if you want to take it.
I will take it. I just again for those that you know who I am, Moore Vu. I'm serving as the task force, a member of the task force here, but also as a acting assistant commissioner of aging and disability services at DHS. And I just want to speak to a little bit of what Calla mentioned about the delay of our go live. And part of that decision is really, as at least speaking for me, be sitting in this work group, the task force, really hearing you all express the concern about just having the time to prepare you or your families as we move into this, from the 4 waiver to 2 waiver or to waiver reimagines. And so we're at a critical point right now where just all the other external factors coming into play, the delay in our submission to CMS, just even the technology side of things. And so, especially in reference to the data breach with our MinChoices, the MinChoices data breach. And so with all these just external factors and challenges, we wanted to make sure that we are moving this in a way that is really, hopefully, that demonstrate care and that we continue to keep you at the center. And so right now, we are just really recognizing that the goal life date of 1/1/27 is not doable in a very meaningful way. And so that has been recognized, and we have moved that up, really talked to the governor's office, and they're in alignment that if we were to execute this in a way that is meaningful, we do need to move the timeline. As in terms of a revised timeline right now, we do not, we're working on assessing that, so stay tuned. Right now we're just jumping one step at a time, and this immediate step is recognizing that we can't meet that's 1/1/27. So we're assessing for a revised timeline, and that's to the extent that I hopefully will bring some. In the space that I'm with, I hear the anxiety, so I'm hoping that this will lower that temperature down a little bit, or that anxiety help you just breathe a little bit as we are moving forward. And I don't know if John is here yet, but
Yep.
happy
John
to.
joined us, so welcome, John.
Okay.
Nice to see you. John, do you want to introduce yourself and then speak from your perspective? You heard a little bit about what Moore was teeing up.
Sure, thank you. Good to see everybody. John Connolly, Deputy Commissioner and State Medicaid Director at DHS. And it sounds like Moore hit many of the points that I would have made. And essentially, we wanted to say, I think, 3 things in essence. I think number one is we're here to announce and to share with you all that the timeline will change. So 1/1/27, January 1st, 2027 will not be the implementation date. And the second thing I would say is that really that's out of a recognition that I think, as many of you have expressed, that we just need more time to get this right. And in order to put people first, we need to get it right. And so we're going to take some additional time, lengthen the timeline, and do the things that we need to do to plan for systems, do the information systems work, of course, in addition to all the work on the policy and program side in partnership with you. And as we progress through this, we'll continue to engage you all in that work, understanding your desire to be a partner in this, and to co-design and to think through many of these issues. So much more to come in that regard. And I think I heard Moore also say that the third thing that I was going to say, which is that we don't yet have a revised timeline, and regret that we don't have that for you yet, but wanted to be timely in disclosing that the timeline is changing, knowing that that was something that was of importance to many of you, if not all of you, and wanting to acknowledge, again, that movement and our desire to work with you on a revised approach here, and a desire to do that so that we get it right for the people that we serve. And so I think those are the highlights in terms of what I'd add to what Moore said. I think she hit on all those things, but just wanted to say those things as well. And I think with that, I don't want to take up any more of the precious time for this group here. I don't know if we're going to have some more conversation here with folks, but glad to get out of the way and let others back in.
John, thank you. this is all new information, and I've already received, emails from folks. Are you willing to take any questions?
Sure.
I'm going to tee one up. I got Chad there as well, but I'm going to just tee one up. And you don't have to answer it right now, but I would be very interested in what the task force can do to help DHS as you make these decisions. So if there's something you need, either you let me know the end of the meeting or another time, but if you have a request of this body, please be sure to just let us know and articulate that.
Sure. I appreciate that. And I think the main things are, again, and I think you've done this, you've articulated in writing and here, of course, the things that are in focus for you in terms of concerns and aspirations for what this will be eventually. And so we'll want to continue to have conversation about what those things are with respect to transition planning and different decision points along the way. And the key things I think that motivated you all to advocate for a revised timeline. What are the things now that we're moving the milestones a bit, or the time frame? What are the key things that you would want to elevate to our attention, that we have a little more time to consider here? So I think that's one thing I'll highlight. And of course, I think Moore said this as well. We've had some events here that are extraordinary and have just pulled at capacity. Looking at others from ADSA here on screen, knowing that we have a tremendous amount that we're grappling with respect to our relationship with the federal government, program integrity. I know that's not new. So I've talked about that here with you all before, and so this even though those things were contributing to some of the revised timeline here, and will inform what that looks like. Again, it gives us an opportunity to have some more conversations about the items that are of particular concern or focus or aspiration for you all.
Cool. That's great. Thank you, John. Chad, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is just more comment as far as transparency, and I feel like I'm sure other members will feel the same. DHS staff had told us there's no way we can change this timeline, so we put our energy into the legislative piece. And so I know things can change, but it does feel like we were provided different information and stuff was going on behind the scenes, and we were kind of working on the same thing at the same time, which now feels like we kind of put all that time for nothing, as we were told. DHS said they couldn't do anything about it, but clearly something to be done. So I just wanted to get that out there as far as making sure that the messaging is consistent with us, because it looks like an inconsistency to me at this point.
So what I'll say to that is, we came here today to tell you, as soon as we were able to share this news, that the timeline had changed. We're doing our best to be transparent, and we thought the timeline was what it was, and when it changed, we're disclosing that to you. So we'll do our best to be forthright and as transparent as we can be, and just take that feedback.
Yeah, thanks, John. Linda Wolford and then Linda Fairchild. Linda Wolford, we can't hear you. There you go.
Yeah, I know. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. Having some trouble with the computer audio a little bit on my testing, and I know that my camera is a little bit high, but thanks, John, for that information. I did have a question, and this has come up in the group a number of times, and that is the Min Choices assessment piece. Because as I know you know, and this group has talked about at length, right, the people's services will be determined by the Min Choices assessment. And there's been some concerns, right, with that tool being I was at DHS for quite a few years, and it's been different iteration after iteration after iteration of it, and it's not normed, it's not pilot tested. And so is anyone looking at the possibility of going a different route, i.e. there's a on the shelf it's called, assessment that has been pilot tested in other states. I understand a lot are using it. Is that at all a consideration, or is that off the table?
So I'll offer an initial response, and appreciate that, Linda, and maybe refer some of the technical or finer details to Moore and Kala on this. but certainly we know that this is a really important piece to this launch, that the assessment will be foundational to how budgets are set and defining care plans and what people's needs are. So understand how important that is to all of this and to Waiver Reimagine writ large. So yes, that is something we're looking at. It's a concern, it's in focus. And then with respect to the Min Choices assessment itself relative to Interi, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yes, aware of that as an option. I'd leave it to Maura and Kala to speak more about how we're thinking about that, but certainly appreciate the question and how important that is.
I'm going to suggest that we loop back on that, Linda, to Moore and Kala after John has to leave, because John, I know you only had a limited window here. So I've got two more hands, three more hands.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
two more hands. Yeah, thanks, Linda. And then John, if you're okay, then we'll set you free. So Linda Fairchild and then Chris.
Hi, I had a question, and I put it out in the email. So I'm concerned because you talk in the information that was sent out that the other HSRI group is making budget recommendations and models. So are we not then part of that? It just seems like there's a multitude of other groups that are making things, and I thought that's what this task force was to do, was to look at different models, look at different avenues, and that we were going to be making recommendations. But this sounded like there's other groups that are going to be doing things. And you talked about a professional insight panel. So I wasn't sure where that was coming from. There were just a lot of things that to me as a part of this team was disturbing to hear, because I put a lot of time into being into this group, and I feel like I was um, blindsided by this. And I know you can't always get information out, but if this group is supposed to be making gains that weren't gained in the last 3 years, I don't see that going to happen if this is kind of how things are. I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but we're a collaborative group, and I feel like a lot of things that we're saying aren't going anywhere. Decisions are already made. So
John, take as much as you want on this, and then I think we'll have a deeper dive with Moore and Kala to be able to speak to how these pieces fit together more, if you're okay with that.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, I regret that I don't have more on this one. I just don't. Linda, I don't have kind of an understanding of that piece of this process. But certainly, one thing I will say in response to you and others is we've understood the desire and certainly want to try to meet those expectations, to be transparent and to be forthright about what's happening in collaborative. So if there's a way that we can communicate differently or promptly, that's certainly feedback we'll take. But we weren't trying to surprise anybody. That's certainly never our intention. But again, here's the feedback, and I'll leave it to the team to talk more about those other groups and HSRI and how that's working. But just know it's definitely our intention to be clear, prompt in communication, and trying to be in working in partnership. So regret that.
Thanks, John. Chris, please, and then we'll set John free.
I appreciate the message, and I'm very thankful that this has been delayed, as we all have been screaming from the mountaintops about it. So thank you for delaying it. I too thought that it was only the ability to delay it was only at the legislature. So I'm glad to hear that DHS has that power to delay it. So what I want to best understand is how Waiver Reimagine Task Force can continue to follow the legislative statute of doing the work to influence the outcome or to have even input in the outcome. What does that look like going forward? If I get you don't have the date today, which is totally fine. That takes time. I respect that. But to be respectful of everybody's time,
how is it that our task force can best put our work forward, going in this like undetermined timeline? And then selfishly, while I have you here, because I don't get to talk to you very often, I'm going to just throw the bone right out there of, if we are expecting that the budgets are going to meet, I'm just going to say a number, 50% of the population, I'm going to respectfully ask that the CAC waiver, since there's about 700 of them in the state of Minnesota, are the exception to this. And I just wanted to say it out loud.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, the comment. And so we'll take that back, and others may have more texture in terms of how to respond. But what I'll say is that, again, we would have loved to come back and say, here's a revised timeline that we at least are thinking about, but we're not there yet. So we wanted to be prompt and timely in terms of just letting folks know this is where we are. And I think, with respect to legislative versus administrative kind of flexibility here in terms of the implementation of this, the law says what it says, and I think where we are at this point, is that it's just not in the realm of the achievable at this moment. I think with some of the information systems issues that we've had to grapple with, that were just kind of external shocks, and also just the other program integrity issues that we've had to process. So it became very clear this was just not going to happen, and wanted to communicate that as promptly as we could to you all. And then on the other kind of policy issues that you're raising here with respect to budgets, I'll make note of that. I'm sure others have too here, and I trust that other experts here on screen and within DHS can give you a fuller answer. But we are certainly mindful of how budgets under Waiver Reimagine will look different. So I'll leave it there. I don't know, Fran, are there others in the queue here?
Well, I know you have to jump, John, so I want to make sure that we honor that. The thing I want to just name for the task force from my facilitator hat is the legislation that defined the task force said that we had to submit a report, I'm going to say middle of January 2027. And part of the issue that the task force had was that was right at the go live date. And so now with the change in the go live date, it seems to me that just means that our work is still on track, right? Because we're finishing our report before the go live date. So the math is more mathing right now than it was, before your decision to delay this, or the announcement to delay this. So, John, is there anything else that you want the group to hear from you before you need to depart?
Yeah, I know, again, that when I was here last, we acknowledged that certainly in the past we could have done things differently and we could have done better. And I'm hearing more feedback to that effect today. And I just want you to know that we hear that. And I don't want to speak for Moore or Heidi or Kala, but I feel safe in saying this much, which is that, again, we're trying to be as transparent as we can be. We want to work with you on this. We want to make sure that we're hearing the different concerns, the different, again, priorities. I don't want to focus on like concerns and negativity, but also what can this be? How can this be positive and be a good step forward for everybody as it's hoped to be? And so we'll just continue having this conversation with you and taking the feedback. And again, I will say again, I think with the revised timeline, it gives us an opportunity again to hear what your key priorities are for this, and have, I think, a good conversation about what a revised timeline can look like, and what are the main things that we can kind of revisit here and make as good as they can be. So I'll just offer that, and certainly I'll be back. So just appreciate you kind of engaging with me today and giving me a bit of your time.
Perfect, John. Thank you so much. And I'll just give you a heads up that there seems to be an underlying assumption that DHS made this decision and announced that they couldn't make this decision before. We can have this conversation with Moore and Kala. You don't need to stay for that, but that right now seems to be the prevailing assumption, and I'm not sure that that's right.
Okay. All right. Thanks, all.
Thanks,
Cool.
John.
Thank you so much, John.
Fran, do you mind if I just respond to that question or comment very quick? Okay.
Do you want more?
Okay. Um, you're right. When we first, came into the Waiver Reimagine, when we started, I mean, that was it's also our marching order that we do have to get this implemented 1/1/27. And I think just throughout our time spent together, we hear the concerns really loud and clear. And I think part of that is for us to be able to take it back to our DHS, chain of command too, and for John, for the commissioner to really hear that this is what we heard from the task force, families and individuals on the waivers and their families are concerned, are worries, are afraid of what what this thing's going to be. I mean, we can execute it, but we're gonna be executing this in a very I was I was gonna use something else, but it will be poorly executed. And so I think it's just a also matter of time for the commissioner to be able to really hear the concern that we brought forward, and for the governor's office to also recognize that. So I think you all have made a very impactful just help us to lift this up, that voice. Like we wanted to do it right, and I think I say this again and again. The staff at DHS, everyone who's on this project has some personal connections to to the disability community and wanted to do it well. And so I think just collectively we're able to, with what we hear in this space, and be able to carry and carry that in the DHS space and be able to move it to the governor's office. So I think it just, for me, this is just highlight about the work and the how we listen to you, how you voice your concern, and we can make a difference. It may not always happen this way, but we're just in a place where now it's like we got to do something. Otherwise, families, this is not going to be helpful for everyone. So I hope that you hear the impact you're making in this work, in this task force.
So I want to just do a couple things. So I want to make sure that we're not having a conversation in the chat. So I'll ask that we pull these things forward. And so one of the sort of implied questions is like, what role do you think the task force letter had in this? But I also want to speak to just the fact that if the CMS submission is not until October 1, that would have allowed for maybe a month of between, let's say, CMS approval arrives and the go live. So there was a whole sort of calendar crunch that was happening as that was getting delayed. But broadly, more Kala, perspectives on what impact do you think that how did the letter help contribute or not contribute to this, do you think?
I think from the DHS has, from where I'm seeing, it's really about the other external factors too. Really, right? It's like the submission to CMS, and we're just in a very different place now than we were with CMS maybe 6 months ago. We have submitted waiver plan, waiver amendment in that timeline in the fall and get approval. But we also experience in our recent waiver amendments that we still right now still waiting for pending. And so just to be thoughtful, that also recognize the challenges, just the different dynamic that we're in, those external factors really also play into the decision to really um, give us very concrete examples in support that if we don't get this approval in the timely manner, and be able to bring people in, not just about the user, but also the counties, the managed care, the people that are responsible for implementing this, the change readiness in management, we're not there. And so I think that really play into it helps, as challenge as it is and barrier. It's also really help us play our case and plead our case that the timing is just not right. So I will say that, but I think it's also great for me to be able to see where the letters and where the directions of the collective we in this task force going, And so I mean that I hope that as we continue to move forward and continue to be engaged, that somehow can help us inform our revised timeline too.
Thank you. Callie, do you want to add anything to that at all? No, okay. Okay. It sounds like it was the confluence of things. Everything kind of landed together. And is there anything more that you or Kella that you want to say about the decision and the decision-making process in this? Because DHS has been positioning that, you know, they didn't have decision authority, but yet the email comes from you all in terms of making this change. So how does decision-making work?
Great questions. So this is started maybe 3 months ago when we were having our data breach, and we're in a very, like I said, DHS is also in a very critical place of how do we ensure, you know, making as we move in dealing with program integrities and the data breach with admin choices. I mean, there's just a lot of different factor coming into play, and how do we move this in a very thoughtful way? How can we you know, really ensuring that we're protecting individual that coming through have their data being protected, that we're, you know, things like this won't happen again. I mean, with technology and system, there's always risk, but how do we really reduce or minimize those risks so that's not, it doesn't happen again? That really take us like a pause, right? To pause and reassess what are we doing in terms of our security risks. How are we enhancing that so we won't really reducing or minimizing those incidents to happen again? And then just like I said, just different things coming into play one after another. We just couldn't pivot, couldn't mitigate it soon enough to continue what we're doing with the waiver Reimagine timeline. And I think I'm going to go back to the point earlier about communications. Kella had mentioned that we are developing a new website where we can post our communications, and that has also been a in areas where we can do better. We've been trying to get this communication up so that we can share information with you all as we making progress, and we've just not been able to do that in a very timely fashion. So those are all like lessons that we have taking, just assessing over the last few, you know, several months that we've been together. How can we do better? What can we do to engage the general member who may not be in this space to know what's going on? And so I think we're always looking for ways to do better.
Thanks more. Kella, anything you want to add? No, okay. I've got Linda Fairchild's questions from before, so I can carry those forward, but does anybody else have any questions for Maura or to Kella regarding this at all? Lisa, please jump right in.
Yeah, thank you. And please do not read any sort of value judgment into the question. It's just a question as I'm trying to track all of this information. But I think what I'm hearing today is that we are delaying the timeline. That's the news of today. The timeline is being delayed. More details to come on that. Just to confirm for my own understanding, I don't believe I'm hearing a commitment or to sort of changing the structure, some of the other things outlined in what had been identified as phase 2 at this time. I'm hearing ongoing conversation and all of that, but not necessarily a commitment to anything other than delaying the timeline at this moment. Does that fairly represent the perspective of the conversation?
And I want to be careful about the timeline. I understand it to be the go live date. Because
Yes,
I don't want
thank you.
people,
So we're talking
right,
about 1/1/27. Yes.
right? Yeah. So I see more nodding. More, do you want to actually articulate that for folks? Do we understand that correctly?
Yes, you are correct that we right now is the go live date of 1/1/27 is not, we're changing that.
And that's the
Thank
only
you. That's
change.
helpful and good news. I just wanted to make sure we're not kind of conflating various elements of this into the same discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. That's great. Julie Johnson.
Um, considering you're going to change the timeline, I'm trying to figure out what this looks like next. So the task force was looking for what seems to be maybe a longer delay than what I feel like you guys are talking about. And so without a timeline, and I know you don't have one, do you have any idea when you would have one? Because it leaves me wondering, where do we go from here?
I was gonna look to call my lifeline, Kala, with the task force has very specific deliverable that will continue to do, right, as we move forward. In terms of, like I said, in terms of timeline, we wanted to share with you as quickly as we can, and we got the blessing from the governor's office, so that's why we're here to share that the go live date is delayed. Just
I understand that. I'm just
that
saying,
part.
do we as a task force want to continue to talk to the legislature about that? Because legislative session is going to be done in May. And when they're not in session, if we need help from the legislators, we will not be able to get it. And so it's kind of a dual track. We know DHS is delaying it, and we don't know how long it's delayed. So I was just wondering if you guys had any discussion internally about when you might have a revised timeline.
Julie, at this point, we don't. We don't have any. We haven't had discussions or about the revised timeline yet.
Yeah. I want to do a couple things. So Katie, I saw you put your hand up and then your hand down. Where do you stand?
Well, I was just going to make a comment about the work of the task force, kind of from where I sit in a facilitation. So, along with you all processing this official delay of the go live, first question that comes to mind for me working with Fran in the facilitation aspect is, okay, what's the work of the task force? What's the work of the body, right? And I don't know that from where I see it right now, the work changes that much. The things that still are not figured out about Waiver Reimagine still have to get figured out. We don't know if there's an additional 1 month, an additional 6 months to do that work. But I think all along it's been kind of how can we do the most good of influencing the project as a group. So that's just an initial impression that the thinking that you all are doing in the work groups that, that Fran's been setting up, that thinking still needs to happen. It just has a little bit more time to get there, which is, as a facilitator, that's great, right? It allows for more of that co-creation, even if that co-creation still doesn't meet the ideal that you all might want or that DHS might want. No co-creation can at least be a little bit more substantive and robust. That would be my hope. But then, then Julie was asking about the legislative piece, and I think that most folks know. I don't know if they know that Hoffman did introduce a bill with a timeline change. So I think to your question, Julie, what the work is to have that bill advance through the legislative process, I'm not quite sure where that stands. I don't know if you know or if anybody else on the meeting knows.
And we can talk about the specifics of the legislature. I've got that as part of the agenda, but briefly, Julie, I would say, I don't think we should be giving up that legislative legwork. And my understanding is we don't know what the delayed go live date is going to be, but my understanding is that anything involving a recalibration of min choices is a multi-year delay. So that would be beyond sort of what is currently in front of Senator Hoffman's committee. So, and we can try to nail that down more. But so yes, more time is great, but maybe we don't have necessarily enough time to do what everybody wants. Katie, is your hand still up or do you want to put it down? And then I had, I think in this order, Linda Fairchild, Jenna Johnson, Chris Erickson, and then Katrine. And then we'll get to a few other things.
I just had a couple of things I wanted to clarify. So when it talks about min choices, it was just that min choices had the data breach. It's not looking into that min choices. Is it functioning well for an evaluation tool to determine the budgets?
That's my understanding. The issue was with the vendor for min choices and getting that figured out more. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because in our letter, we talked a lot about that min choices just isn't effectively dealing with budgets. So then the next concern is that is HRSI then determining the budgets? And if so, are we as a collaborative group going to have information based on that? Is it going to be based on person-centered needs or living scenarios?
Okay.
Or maybe we don't know that.
And we can do this briefly, but more, Kala, I want to make sure we're using the language correctly. Is HSRI deciding the budgets? So let's clarify this.
Kella, I saw you on mute.
I'll
Go
hop in.
ahead.
Yeah. So HSRI alone is not determining, making a decision about the final amount of money, individual budget range that's being assigned to individuals who are accessing the waivers. They are helping to create a construct, a structure that has multiple inputs that DHS gets to make decisions on. And then we apply those decisions to arrive at the final numbers. But HSRI alone is not deciding what the numbers are. They're helping to make a recommendation on what is the formula we might use. DHS has to inform the inputs, and then it arrives at a dollar amount. So hopefully that helps, but HSRI is not a decision-making body as to the amount of money that's allocated to people in these individual budget ranges that we talk about.
Okay. So then who is part of the expert panel that they're working with that it states?
So Adrian, let me ask Adrian. Adrian, if you could get the list of the expert panel for us, because I've looked on the line and I can't get it, but I know we've got it. But our two representatives are Dr. Kate and Mike Tessner from the task force.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure we had input because it seems like there's multitudes because now it talks about a virtual insight panel that will have one for people and families with disabilities and then a professional input panel.
So
Seems like we're having lots of groups.
Let's get that question
So,
answered.
yeah.
Kala.
So I think this will be important for us to sort through about there are multiple bodies of people that are involved and are going to be involved in Waiver Reimagine. And I think we as DHS believe in that we wouldn't want to alone have 21 task force members help to support the full design and implementation of Waiver Reimagine, that there is a lot of value to getting a multitude of perspectives from people, their family members, lead agencies, etc. So the task force alone won't be the sole body that helps to support Waiver Reimagine phase 2 and what I would anticipate beyond. So Linda, what you see in there, the expert panel has been existing since December and has been connected, and Fran identified the way that we're staying involved with with the expert panel is through having some crossover between who's on the task force and who's on the expert panel. Additionally, that virtual insight panel is an opportunity that has always existed within DSD. When I mean always existed, I mean it has a greater purpose beyond Waiver Reimagine for people to tap into, to say, hey, I have feedback, I have questions, I have comments, I have concerns. And in this realm, we're talking in the scope of Waiver Reimagine, people are welcome to use the virtual insight panel through the Disability Services Division through DHS to submit those. And that's, and really how we do that usually is, it's kind of like quick hits. We survey people, or we put out a question or two that says, hey, tell us what you think. Tell us what you feel. Tell us what your thoughts are. And we use that virtual insight panel to then share it out and then collect some quick wins for people that is reflective of their perspective. So I think it's important, and maybe we need to come back to this at some point, but just to re-up that the task force alone isn't the sole body that's helping to support Waiver Reimagine. There will be multiple bodies. And in that memo, or in that announcement that was made earlier this morning, that talks about 2 of them, as well as then the Waiver Reimagine task force is a third body. So I don't know if that helps, or if you want me to add more there, but there's pockets of work happening wherever, and we can bring broader updates to this group too to help create.
And the one piece that I want to add is I've been in conversations with a few of you, and that is there's probably opportunity to bring the task force and the expert panel in more alignment. And so the target right now is for the next meeting, which is in April, for folks from HSRI to come to present and talk about the budget logic. And I think there's going to be sort of that will start to be bridge a little bit more of what's happening in the task force, what's happening in the expert panel. But then we can look at this as facilitators with more rigor to see if there's opportunity for us to pull that together, because I know it's sort of felt like people are working in silos, and I don't think that's the intent. And now I think we're at the place where we can start to knit things a little bit more together. So that's not lost on the facilitation team. I want you, Linda, you to know that. I want everybody to know that. So let me make sure I've got this order right. I have Jenna. I saw Chris's hand. I see Chris's hand is down, so I'll double check with you, Chris. Then Katrine, then Linda Wolford, and then we'll see where we are in terms of other things we need to talk about. So Jenna.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to bring up, I was so happy to hear that it was delayed. That just seemed like such a relief. And now after today talking, I'm just as worried as I was before we sent the letter. I mean, we still have a fault. To me, it just seems like we still have a faulty assessment process. We still have no numbers to go by. We've never been given any data or any information about how HRSI is developing these budget methodologies. And me personally not knowing just makes it a black hole that doesn't feel safe. And
Cindy,
so
can I speak to that for a second?
You can.
Yes. Our meeting in April is right now dedicated to understanding the budget methodologies. So as that discomfort, I'm hoping will get assuaged at least a little bit in April, please.
But I think we identified, at least people on the task force, a lot of people have identified that the way it looked, or the way it looks, it's not going to work. And so what is there just about how are we going to make it work before implementation date if we don't change some of the things within it that are not workable?
Totally.
It just scares me that, okay, good. I was like so elated, and now I'm just, like here we are again, just going forward with the same old crap, pardon me. But is the task force really going to make any difference? Are we going to be able to make any difference in how these budgets are going to go and how people's lives are going to go? I just hope we can, because it's a lot of time invested. And that's all I'll say for now.
Okay. The couple things I want to acknowledge. So one is, I think I have to look at the calendar, but I think the plan is to try to get the revised budget numbers in our meeting like June, July-ish. I'll have to look, but it was for the summer. So instead of working off the 2021 numbers, you'll have the revised numbers. But first we'll do the methodology, then we'll get the numbers. But the other thing I want to acknowledge that John said when he was here is how important the task force is in terms of raising key priorities. And so let's occupy that space, right? Cindy, like let's advance that. I heard that as an invitation. Just want to share with you like what's on the facilitation team sort of radar that way. Chris, hand was up, hand is down. Are you still hand down?
I'm hand up.
Okay.
I just want to ask a couple clarifying questions. I heard you say, Fran, that the min choice assessment, if that were to be reworked, that may take a couple of years. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. It's just what my brain heard.
Yeah.
So I want to best understand, is that what's on the table, or is that just an example of of if that were a thing, that's what it would take?
Yeah, so here's the thing that's going on in my head. If that were to be prioritized, my understanding is that would take a few years, which is beyond, I believe, what the scope of this delay is right now. And Lauren Kella, tell me if I have that wrong. But to me, it's just the data breach concerns, not about the validity and reliability testing. So the task force letter had said up to 36 months. And that was with the intention of giving time for reliability and validity testing. And we also know that any delay in Waiver Reimagine has a budget impact. And so I suspect that's part of what is informing the calculus of how to proceed.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on to that a little bit, is that right now the delay that was announced this morning has not yet been determined if that changes the scope of Waiver Reimagine at that newly defined date. Whatever that new date is, we do not yet have any further decisions about if the scope of Waiver Reimagine, of what we've all been planning for to happen 1/1, is or is not going to change. So I think I just would re-up that piece of what you're saying, Fran.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that. I just have to ask the question then, I guess twofold. In the beginning, and I think I heard others echo this, we understood that DHS, it wasn't within their power to delay, and that came from a statutory compliance. And I'm not trying to kick the dog on that. I'm trying to understand is that if DHS did have that power, that's cool. I want to say I'm super thankful for the delay, but I want to better understand the givens, because I understood that it was a given that DHS didn't have the power. Now I want to best understand, are our givens still given, or are there other things that may not be how we interpreted them or understand them or how they were presented? What are our givens the same?
Yeah, Chris, I hear you saying is what we previously identified as fixed items in December 18th meeting, do those still hold true? Are those still fixed items or not? And I can say, again, I think that relates to the scope with this new, we're going to have a new date, a new go live date. And is the scope changed for that new go live date? And that's what I don't know yet. I don't know that our team knows that fully. So
Okay.
what I will say though, I think Chris, what I hear you saying is let's take that back. We can get more information, bring it back next time about what is or isn't fixed. I don't know. And we have no timeline around when we will decide that. So
Okay.
I want that. But I hear you saying that's important to know.
Sure, it's the rules of
Yeah.
the game. We want to best understand, so we're playing within the lines there. And then lastly, Governor Walz had made the suggestion of going to a DHS central rather than all of the counties and tribes managing. So I just got asked the question, if we're going to wipe the slate clean, why don't we wipe the whole slate clean instead of trying to hodgepodge things that aren't working back together? If we're just keep plugging the holes in the dam, rip out the dam and make a whole new one. If we're going to do it, let's do it right.
I have on my updates, how does the governor's proposal to restructure affect Waiver Reimagine? And my understanding as of the latest is there's not a direct correlation to Waiver Reimagine. Is that correct right now? So yeah, it's on my
That's
tickler.
my ask though, is it may not be because people aren't walking in these shoes, but if all of us are walking in these shoes, let's talk about it and let's put it on the table.
I'm
Thank you.
gonna add that to sort of my tracking list. And thank you for muting if you're not speaking. I appreciate that. Cindy and Jenna, would you lower your hand unless you've got another question? I've got Katrine and then Linda Wolford, and then we'll see where we are. You're muted, Katrine.
Hi there. I'm really happy to hear that we're going to be talking about min choices in April. But I just wanted to plant this nugget for the time being, and DHS can correct me if I'm wrong about anything. I have had finance and data.
Katrine, you are really hard to hear. And I don't know if you're on a headset that's battery powered, but it feels like the batteries are dying.
Okay, one moment.
Let's see if we can get you back. And I want to clarify one thing. I was talking about HSRI for April. I don't currently have min choices on the agenda for April. So I just want to be clear in setting expectations that way.
Can you hear me better now?
Much. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to plant this nugget. I've had a very strong interest in the methodology for a long time. And my colleagues have done a number of data requests, and I just this is what I understand as how it works. The structural issue in how the model is being described, the min choices doesn't directly determine the participant's budget. Instead, data is fed from DHS into the HSRI model, which assigns individuals into predetermined groupings or support ranges. The budget is then derived from that grouping, not from the full scope of the individually assessed needs. And those groupings themselves are based largely on historical utilization and cost patterns, not purely on clinical or functional need. So while min choices is part of the input, it's not what is actually driving the budget. The model is. So if I'm wrong about any part of that, I would appreciate a correction.
I can't say whether you're right or wrong, but what I can say is you're early. And that is what you're raising as a question is exactly the kind of conversation that I think is going to be important in April. So if you're okay, if we don't land that right now, because I want to make sure that we've got the people that can answer all those questions, including representatives from HSRI in terms of their methodology. So this is a great example of what I was saying about the communication complexity. We've got like these little pockets, and let's hope that in April we can get sort of everybody around the table for us to have a more robust conversation about that.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Linda Wolford.
Okay. And I hope I put my hand on. By the way, we can't see when our hand is up or down, so that's why we forget to turn it. You can't see it. Yeah. So you can on other platforms. So, but this one you can't. So, anyway, I'm still bringing back because you said to bring it back up to Kala and more. The min choices assessment, which we don't have scheduled to talk about. And I know that you've all talked about data breach, but my question comes back to, can we do a data request / cost analysis of proceeding forward with min choices and trying to get it right, with how we would get it pilot tested and what's the other word, normed. And I think I've heard today that that's a couple year process, which to me is a long time. And if we're talking about the longer the time period, the more costly this project becomes. Should we be looking at doing a cost analysis of just saying, hey, do we stop with min choices and go to the assessment that's already been developed and is being used amongst other states? I don't know if there's I think part of it, okay, I'm just going to speak frankly, as I hope I can, is there's some territorial things around this, right? That this has been a long time coming, lots of effort, lots of money, lots of time, but that has happened, and where are we at? We're still not ready to implement, and we can't say that this assessment is accurately measuring people's needs. And from what I've heard from people having it, it does not seem to be accurately measuring needs. And so is DHS at all considering saying we should maybe be doing an analysis to see if we proceed forward with this instrument, or do we look at what's already been developed, normed, and just say we're going to switch? Or is that not a consideration, or something that we could at least ask for a data analysis, i.e. budget analysis, to see which would be the better way to go? Am I being clear with my question?
I think so, Linda. Let me tell you how it's landing in my head, and then you correct me. I'm hearing that if we could have some kind of financial analysis that maybe looks at three scenarios. One is, what is going to be the cost if we go forward with an unvalidated instrument and the related derivative cost? What would be the cost if there's a delay that allows for the instrument to be normed because there's budget implications because Waiver Reimagine isn't implemented? And the third might be, what would be the associated cost and maybe timelines associated with shifting the data onto another platform that's already normed and validated? But then we'd have the data transfer piece. But I'm hearing, is there a way for us to get some kind of financial assessments and projections related to that? Am I in the right space?
Mute. There, yeah, mute's taking forever.
Yeah.
Just so you know, there's a big delay when you hit it. Yes, you are right on. You're exactly what I was trying to get at.
Okay. Okay. I don't want to put DHS in the spot to make a decision, yes or no on that, but are you open to that conversation? More, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, hi, Linda. I think that are all very great questions, and I heard a lot from this group too about considerations or, taking into account when we are revising or considering exploring the revised timeline. And so I think, that's what we'll need, right? That's really looking at the scope of Waiver Reimagines and all that comes with the timelines and milestones of when we get to that place where we're really assessing the timeline, the new timeline, the new milestone. So I think I hear all of what you all are saying, and we'll take this back to be part of what we, like I said, can't promise anything, but it's something that we definitely, the feedback that we're open to this feedback and take it with us when we are assessing the scope of Waiver Reimagines and timelines.
Perfect. And I'm going to keep this on my radar. So I'll be bird dogging a little bit in terms of that. Perfect. I am tempted to propose about a 10-minute leg stretch. I'm not seeing any hands. So how do you feel about like stretching your legs, refueling a little bit, and we'll change gears and start to open up the conversation about service menus and budgets and all that kind of stuff. Perfect. So let's come back at about 33 minutes after the hour. And I will stay here.
Fran,
Yes.
this is Cindy and Jenna, and
Hey,
I'm wondering
Cindy.
if you can fix. I was wondering if you could fix her name. It says Jopison.
Yeah, I saw that too. I will ask Anna to do that. Their last name is Johnson. Anna, if you're there and not on break, that would be helpful.
Okay.
I don't have the
Jenna
power.
noticed it was wrong. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I think I got it.
you did. You got it. Thank you. Mike, I see you. Could someone send this group a copy? So is this group the task force, or is there a separate group you're looking for?
Somebody said they were going to send it to the task force. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it did go out. Oh, it probably went out to an e-list. Let me send it to you. Let me find my copy. And I'll get that out to you.
Fran, it's in the chat.
Oh, okay.
The
Mike, if you,
website.
perfect. It's at 126. Mike, I think that's where you want it. I can also forward you the email so you can try to get on that list. Let's see if I can find it here.
Okay, I've got the document.
Okay, perfect. And I'm going to forward you the email just so you've got that as well for what it's worth.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Julie. I can't keep track of all the moving parts.
Fran, I heard you say thanks, Julie, and I didn't do anything. So you must be talking about somebody else.
No, I'm talking to you because you knew it was in the chat and I can't see the more complete
Oh.
chat. So thank you for that.
Okay.
I might be able to move that up. Got about 5 more minutes, 6 more minutes. Mike, I don't know if you want to mute. I occasionally hear things from your side of the world.
I'm afraid to mute because I'm not sure that I'll ever come back.
Do you want to just try it now, knowing that you could pop back on if you had to while we're still on break?
I can try it.
Okay, you're still live. Let's see. Now you're muted. Can't hear you. Let's try again.
Can you hear me now?
You worked. I love it when technology is actually helpful. Okay, Chris, I'm going to ask you to hold down the fort for 1 minute. I need to run downstairs and get an orange because I'm ravenous and I can eat that at my desk.
No problem. I share my popcorn with you.
Oh, that looks really good. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, I'm back on duty.
It was wild while you were gone, Fran. We almost had a rave.
You're
Is
likely
that
to have
even a
way
thing
more.
anymore?
You're likely to have more fun. If I knew how to juggle, I would demonstrate that to you all, but I don't. And it would not end well.
You'd have orange juice.
It would. My local
Ooh, those
Aldi's.
are so good.
Oh, right.
These
Yes.
are from Costco. They're very good.
We buy those too. They're delicious.
Okay.
Since we're comparing snack foods, my Aldi's had Cara oranges, and I had never really paid attention to the different kind of varieties of oranges. And now when I see Cara, I have a client who's like, "Oh my God, we've Cara oranges for break," and it was a big thing. So now I'm hooked. I saw that Callie did a thumbs up on that too. Awesome. Okay. Awesomeness. I'm going to keep us rolling because if we can get through everything and get out of here early, I suspect nobody would complain about that. So let me share with you my thinking. That was a little slow. So I don't know if that's the system is slow or my system is slow, but are you seeing a title that says I tend to be methodical? Okay. So hopefully we've worked together enough over the past few months to know that sort of I do tend to be methodical. And I want to just share a couple of things on this. So we are going to take a deeper dive into two topics with Kala. One is going to be the service menu concepts, and the other is going to be what's included in individual budgets and what's going to be covered potentially by other sources that way. And I really want us to have this conversation in a methodical way, in part because as it shows in the first bullet, this helps to assure that we are all in the same place at the same time. So toward that end, you may want to have a method of keeping track of things that pop in your head as we go, whether it's notes or whatever you've got as your personal method that way, because I don't want you to lose your points. Because this topic and this time is not going to be a great time for us to sort of popcorn things out. We're going to want to do this methodically. So let me tell you what my proposed plan is, proposed structure. So I'm going to ask Kala, wherever we start, to just do kind of a topic overview. And it's either going to be the whole topic or at least a substantial chapter of it so that we've got some grounding there. Then we'll query questions of clarity. So these are the questions that are better designed to deepen understanding, meaning, or intent before we start like debating or agreeing or disagreeing. So this is all about understanding. To me, then the next thing we might want to acknowledge or name is what feels like it's different or what feels like it's changing from the known and current system. So we can just name that as differences. Then I'd be taking the temperature of you all as a task force in two parts. The first is based upon what Kala presented, what are the positives? What are the things that are landing well? And then the second one are the deltas. What would be suggested changes, upgrades, questions, or concerns for consideration? And we'll do those pluses, what are the positives, and we'll get that list pulled together, and then we'll jump over to the deltas, the upgrades or the changes. And then if there's any key takeaways or to-dos or anything like that, we'll make sure we capture that as a list. So Kala, I might ask you, to say, what did you hear? What are the areas of concern? That kind of a thing, just to make sure we land it. And then we'll go to the second topic, which is probably the budget part of it. So this is my proposed framework. So I'm going to keep this up on my radar so that I can facilitate, but I wanted you all to let you know that my intention is not to be heavy-handed. It really is just to give us structure so that we can all be hearing the same thing at the same time. So Kala, are you ready? Are you ready to sort of tee up the topic and tell us what we're talking about and maybe why it matters?
Yes, I am here.
Awesome.
Ready for it.
Perfect. Are
All
you going to
right.
screen share at all, or what's your plan that way?
Yeah, I'm gonna start by screen sharing the process map. So I think a few of us have socialized the process map a bit in the work groups that Fran has facilitated in the small non-quorum work groups with the task force members. But I'm gonna bring that up as a starting point just to level set about where we're focused today as it relates to service menus and in and out of budget. And I'm going to refer to it as in and out of budget for the rest of the day if we're okay with that. But I hear you, Fran, saying, hey, there's probably a better way to describe this. So with that, I will share my screen. I'll show you all. Again, this is probably something that you all have seen. I will acknowledge it was
only a
updated
few
last
people
week.
have seen it. Kala, only a
Oh.
few people have seen it. So
Okay, perfect. No problem. Okay, I'm going to try this. Is it working?
not yet, but mine was slow. There, it's coming up.
Okay, and I recognize this is super small probably, so it's okay if you're unable to see or read the text here. I just want to show you left to right, top to bottom. This is the totality of the process map that it's super high level. This is our vision as DHS about how we want to work people through from point of intake and coming through the front door all the way until the time in which they're at least receiving services, come Waiver, Reimagine, go live. And there's 14 steps from left to right here. Not all of these steps apply to everyone. But today, what my focus you'll see here is that there are a couple boxes here in red, and that's what today's focus will be on as it relates to service menus and services that are in and out of budget. So I'm going to zoom in and take us till this last red box here, acknowledging that there is more to come. There's more that happens after, but today's focus is really on the front end of these pieces. So you'll see me start to zoom in a bit.
Yeah, while you're zooming in and getting your screen centered, that's great. But I just want to sort of narrate this a little bit for folks that may not be able to see it as clearly. And that is these red boxes and the topics of focus are about midway in that overall process map from box 1 to about box 14. So just to sort of give you a sense. And I know, Kelly, you're going to build this out, so I'll shut up now.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so starting with the left, am I zoomed in far enough or would you like me to move in a bit closer?
It looks pretty good. If there's somebody that can't see it, and you're going to read every box.
Yeah, if you're going to read it, it's fine. There, that's
Yep.
better. Far better.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm just having to move this around a little bit. Sorry if I'm scrolling a little bit fast. Okay, so I am zoomed in. I am now on the far top left of the image that I previously shared. So we're going to start with box 1. Box 1 reflects front door intake, min choices, and assessment or reassessment that's being conducted by a county or a tribe. And it starts with what supports are needed or being requested. So this is in collaboration with a county or a tribe and the person, family members, whomever the person chooses to be part of that conversation, to say, what's at hand here? What do we need? What's being requested? Moving into box 2 then, still in partnership with the lead agency and the tribe. This would likely be an assessor or a reassessor in collaboration with the person who's being assessed or reassessed, is, do I qualify for the disability waiver program? So when we say that, that's really around, do I meet eligibility requirements? For those who are really sophisticated in this space, it's also identifying what's the level of care. And at box 2, then, that is where the assessment results are really shown to people, is do I qualify for the disability waiver program? Circle 1 represents where the support range and where the budget range will then be known by an individual. So when we say support ranges, many of you, I think, are familiar with, back a few years prior, DHS published some information that was a table or a chart that described support ranges for adults, including support ranges 1, 2, 3, 4, L, H, and E. They were unlikely in this same exact order, but for ease of this presentation, I ordered them numerical and then alpha. And in that table also described what would be the budget range that is assigned to individuals dependent on which support range, 1, 2, 3, 4, L, H, or E, the person was determined. And a reminder, we'll get into this likely more at the April meeting with HSRI for the task force. But when we talk about support ranges 1, 2, 3, 4, L, H, and E, that is descriptive of general support needs. It's also descriptive of medical or health needs. And it is also a descriptor that understands a person's behavioral, emotional, psychosocial needs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, L, H, and E are reflective of 3 characteristics of people. Again, being general support, medical or health, and then behavioral or emotional needs, psychosocial needs. So at this point in time, when you get to this place and you identify in box 2, do I qualify for the disability waiver program or not? Again, at that same point, then that is when one of these, through the assessment results, that's when our plan is that one of these support ranges, 1, 2, 3, 4, L, H, or E, would be described or assigned to an individual. I'm going to scroll us a little bit here to the right and show then on my screen box 3. So in between box 2, circle 1, and box 3, what happens at this point is that a person has been identified that they are in fact going to move forward and either open to one of the 2 new disability waivers. A reminder that CADI, CAC, BIDD are the existing disability waivers. We will soon transition upon Waiver Reimagine go live to 2 new waivers, either the individual support waiver or residential support waiver. And what happens at this point between, again, box 2, circle 1, and box 3 is for those who choose to either open to one of those 2 new waivers, or for those who are transitioning from CADI, CAC, BIDD to one of the new 2 waivers, that's happening right here at this threshold. And again, at that point in time, that's when support range is known. And once you know your support range, generally speaking, you understand the budget range that's going to be assigned to you. Moving in then to the right to box 3 is what services am I choosing? So at that point now, this is happening more so in collaboration with the lead agency's case manager. Now that the waiver has been opened and the person is open to a disability waiver program, open to the disability waiver program, really now it's trying to discern what services am I choosing? And services are really important because we are using services to identify which waiver program type someone's on. So which of the 2 new waivers then am I on based upon what services are chosen. Moving to the right, again, still in collaboration with a waiver case manager, the person and their support persons or people who are involved in their lives. Move into box 4 to then decide, well, which waiver am I actually qualifying for? Based upon the services, that will help to inform which waiver. And what box 5 and 6 to the right of that show then is that, again, box 5 represents the residential support waiver. So what box 5 indicates is that either integrated community supports, family residential services, community residential services or customized living is needed to be accessed, needs to be accessed for somebody to be on the residential support waiver. If one of those 4 services are not being accessed, then we move to box 6, and box 6 identifies that the person is then on the individual support waiver. This is a lot of what we're going to talk about today with box 5 and box 6 then, is we're going to take a deeper cut at what services are available under each of those disability waiver program types. So we'll show you that a little bit in just a little bit. I'll pull up a slide deck and reflect that. From there, after boxes 5 and 6, sorry, I'm just going to show this whole thing. Boxes 5 and 6, which are identifying, is one of these 4 services ICS, FRS, CRS, or CL authorized? If so, it's on the residential support waiver. If not, a person's on the individual support waiver. And at that point, then the individual budget range is what we're anticipating kind of formally assigned. It is confirmed that the amount of money that's being assigned to me because of the services I am or am not accessing is now clear to me. I understand what that money is that's available to me. Moving then one more box to the right is box 7. Based upon the amount of money, which I'm referring to right now as individual budget range that's been assigned to me, I need to figure out then how will my services, the totality of all the services that I'm choosing, be delivered within the money that's being assigned to me. And also making note of some of the services that I may be choosing may not require me to use or purchase those services using the amount of money that was assigned to me. I may be able to access some services without using the money that was assigned to me to get those services. And this box 7 is what we'll talk about today as well, is based upon the services that will be available to individuals. And again, there'll be service menus specific to the individual support waiver, service menus specific to residential support waiver. Which of these require me to purchase that service within my individual budget range with the money that's been assigned to me versus what services can I access without using the money that was assigned to me in my individual budget range? I'm going to stop sharing and just ask.
Cal, pause right there for a second. So a couple things. Perfect. Okay. So first of all, if there are any questions related to box 1 through 4, which were the ones in blue before we came to the deep dive topics, the ones that Cal is going to discuss today, I'm going to ask you to either personally parking lot those or send those to me, and we can have a separate conversation as a task force about those. But I want to, if you're all willing, I really think that we need to focus on what are the service menu items and then what is in and out of budget, because those questions keep showing up in the work groups. So I'm not stepping over it. I'm only stepping over it temporarily for today. Lisa, please. And then I'm going to field questions of clarity.
Yeah, this is just for my own clarification. When we're talking about things that are in and out of budget, services that are in and out of budget, when we're thinking about things that are out of budget, are we talking about potentially things like state plan services that are not coming out of the budget?
We'll get to that more, Lisa, in a second, but we are talking about that. We are talking specific for this purpose. I wouldn't categorize it as that right now, Lisa, because what you'll see is it's actually a rather expansive list. I won't say it's totally expansive, but that wouldn't be the one characteristic I would say is true for all of. So we'll talk about what's the logic that we use to arrive at what services are inside and outside of budget. So we'll talk about that in a second, Lisa. The other thing, I think the biggest thing I would take away is when talking about services outside of budget, it's really about what services can I access or choose if I'm eligible to get without using that money that's assigned to me. So we'll talk about the logic about how we arrived at what's in and out of budget, but
yeah,
it's I wouldn't say specifically it's state plan services. That's an answer.
Yeah, so let's, and we'll unpack this really slowly. Jenna and Cindy, you turned on your camera. Was that a way of raising your hand? Perfect, I see it.
Yes. Kayla, I just have a question. I've never really understood what the L, H, and E stand for? Or are they just random letters?
Well, they're short for low, high, and extraordinary.
Oh, okay.
But
I never knew that.
they represent something bigger than that. But just in short, they're my understanding, my greatest understanding, is that 1, 2, 3, 4 LHE were used an alphanumeric that was assigned, and they picked one character to represent different needs of people.
Mhm.
So that's in short, low, high, extraordinary. What we're
Thank
working
you.
to further do, Cindy, though, is further explain and describe for you all what each of those mean, like what are descriptors or attributes of people that might be assigned to that support range. So that will come later.
Like
in the month.
example, if you had a feeding tube and a catheter, you might be the extraordinary. Just an example.
Yeah,
Something
I would say
will be
that's
identified.
Yep. So with 1, 2, 3, 4 L, H, and E, we will, and I don't know how much of this we're gonna I don't know how much value, so this will be good for this team to help us over time understand how much do you all want to better understand kind of again the attributes and understanding what those represent. But in short, each one of those 1, 2, 3, 4 L, H, and E should be describers that we use to understand people's needs around general support needs, medical or health needs, and then psychosocial or emotional needs.
Okay.
So
And
something
Kella, to me, this is one of those things that we're going to get into more detail in April with HSRI on. So I want to be clear on that. I also want to acknowledge, Mike, you put something in the chat, and I want to make sure that the chat is available to everybody. And you wrote, how will we know that a person is able to achieve an integrated life with services in and out of budget? So when we get to that part of the conversation, let's pull that forward if you're okay with that. Is that work? Okay, perfect. And Linda Fairchild, I'm going to be a little heavy-handed to keep us moving to get to the essence of our conversation. Please.
So this material is based on the Waiver Reimagine breakdown report from 2019, correct? And if so,
No, I don't know if help me understand that. Are you asking if this map was built in 2019?
no. The frameworks and the structure for it originally came from the legislative report for Waiver Reimagine project in 2019. Is that correct? Because
Linda,
that's
where are you
where the
going? Where are
levels
you
are
going?
broken down.
Where are you going with this? What's your question there? Because
Well,
it
I
feels
just
like
want to
there's more
know
there.
if it will be, if this is old data from 2019, will we be upgrading it before it comes to be used?
What data? Can you help me understand what data you're referencing?
So in that report, it breaks down how all of the 1 through H works and
Oh, yeah.
classifications as to budgets and things. I just wanted to know if it's going to be updated so that, because things have changed, there isn't a lot of behavioral or medical in there. So I just want to make sure that we're all getting good data for determining all of these caseloads, because that's pretty much essential what it is. But I'll be quiet.
Carla, please, because I think that's,
Yeah.
you're using the framework. We're not using the data, and the data is all going to be updated, right, Carla?
Correct. So all of the you're exactly right. So the data that's being used right now, HSRI is actively recalibrating our methodology, which includes helping to redefine who is a 1, who's a 2, who's a 3, who's a 4, who's an L, who's an H, who's an E, as well as then what's the amount of money that gets assigned to a person based upon that 1, 2, 3, 4 L, H, or E. So that is part of the recalibration activities that HSRI is currently underway. And we'll be getting that in the upcoming months from them. So to answer your question in short, Linda, is yes, all of that is being redone. And all of that will be refreshed using fiscal year 2025 data utilization and authorization trends to help inform it.
Cool. I've got Dr. Kate, and then we're going to focus on the first 2 boxes that Kala has about what's on the service menus. Dr. Kate.
Point of concern about language. Why do you go through residential first? Because process matters and it prioritizes residential over individual.
Yeah, great question, Linda. Or I'm sorry, Dr. Kate. Wasn't intentional on my end.
Does
It
I'm
matters.
gonna explain, it matters a great deal because it says we are thinking about residential placements first, and if you don't fit there, then you go to individual, and it should be reversed.
Yep, that's very fair. I'll take that away and we can get that corrected.
Yep.
Not
And
intentional
Mike-
on my behalf.
And Mike said yes too. So thank you.
On it, no problem.
All right, Kala, take the deep dive now into what the service menu boxes.
All right, let's take a deeper cut. So I'm going to share my screen if I can figure this out. Share a window. Okay, you all should start to see a PowerPoint, and I'm going to play it from the current slide. Can someone just verbalize? I don't see any of you anymore.
It's there.
It's there. Okay. So we're going to dive into first waiver service menus. And you would have seen this in those first two boxes. I think it was box 5 and 6 that we want to zoom into on the process map. So service menus for today's working language and open to feedback about the language that we use is that service menus are the list of services that are going to be available to people for each of the different waivers, so both of the waivers. So when looking at individual support waiver, residential support waiver, we will have a list of services that are available to people depending on the waiver that you're accessing. Just wanting to highlight that in 2021, part of Waiver Reimagine Phase 1, a reminder that disability waivers, at that time CADI-CAC, BI, and DD, all of those services were consolidated and they made up what is now today 32 services that are available for each CADI-CAC, BI, and DD. So these mirror each other across the 4 disability waiver services. I'm not going to click on this, but I can throw this also in the chat, or Adrian, if you want to as well, that'd be helpful to me. Just throw into the chat. If you want more information about services, you're welcome to go onto our manual, and it will talk with you all about what is the definition of each services, what's covered, what's not covered, what are the limitations of the requirements that are needed of me if I participate in this service or choose this service.
Kala, that is for the 4 existing waivers or the future?
Correct.
4 existing waivers.
Yep,
Okay.
this is for the 4 existing. This is how it happens today.
Perfect.
Okay, this takes us a step further to talk about upon Waiver Reimagine go live. Our plans include ensuring that each waiver will have a tailored menu of services designed to meet needs and preferences of the people it serves. So we're planning for all 32 services that exist today. They will continue to exist come Waiver Reimagine go live, and they will be available in either the individual support waiver and or residential support waiver. With that being said, there will be significant crossover between the services there will be significant crossover of services between the 2 waivers. Oop, I'm noticing I have a spelling error. Sorry about that. Despite not all services will be available on both waivers. So there is going to be a lot of crossover available on both, but they will not mirror each other. Our goal and our plans include creating as least amount, the fewest number of changes to the existing service structures as possible. When I talk about service structure, again, I'm talking about how is a service defined today? What's covered under that? What's not covered under that? What are the limitations or the requirements for me to participate or choose that service? So the goal is to do as little as possible to our services, those 32 services, to prepare us for Waiver Reimagine go live. With that being said, we do know that there will be a few changes that we do need to make. Then the last thing, and I don't know if it's, was showing up hidden on my screen, but the last bullet point here is just that our plans include having established some guiding principles to serve as the basis for our plans. So we've put some guardrails up and some criteria that help us to best understand or arrive at decisions about what is our service menu for each of the waivers. Fran, do you want me to pause and take questions, or do you want me to keep going?
I'm going to suggest you go a little further because I think when you get concrete, it will probably answer some of the questions that would emerge now.
Great. So these are the Waiver Reimagine service menus. This table on the left demonstrates our plans for services that will only services that will be available on only one of the two new waivers. So what we've tried to demonstrate on the left is of the 32 total services, all but 8 of them are available on both. So instead of listing out every single service, we just peeled out the ones that are available only on one or the other. And I'll walk through them really quick. So on the far left column, we have caregiver living expenses, consumer directed community supports, environmental accessibility adaptations, and night supervision. On the right of the table demonstrates services that will only be available on the residential support waiver come Waiver Reimagine Go Live, which includes community residential services, customized living, family residential services, and integrated community supports. Our goal was to make as many of them available on both as possible, but we also understood that there are current limitations within the current service structures of these services where we wanted to ensure that we were prohibiting the potential for duplication of services. So what you'll see here is where these are only allowable on one or the other, it's most generally related to the fact that there could be potential duplication of services. The other thing we believe to be true right now would be open to this feedback, but what we see here listed in this chart is also what we understand to be true today. For example, we don't believe the data that we've pulled suggests that there is nobody today currently accessing CDCS and customized living simultaneously. So we believe that these are true today. The two notes on the right, and then I'll take a pause because this is the end of this service menu content, is that one thing that we do want to highlight is we understand that CDCS is really important for people, CDCS being consumer directed community supports. And one of the CDCS allows for people to have budget and or employer authority. Budget meaning how much money people want to spend on certain services or within the certain service. And then employer authority being about how services, the amount of responsibility that a person wants to have in identifying their worker for a select service. And we understand that CDCS is of interest to some people who are accessing some of these services. And so our intent is that once we go live, it may take us months, years, we're unsure, but DHS wants to explore how CDCS may become available under the residential support waiver as well, but that will take a lot further exploration. Additionally, wanting to elevate that under the individual support waiver, CDCS has what we know today is that CDCS in our current CADI-CAC BIDD world has 8 service categories, 2 of which include either home modifications and vehicle modifications. We are no longer going to authorize home modifications and vehicle modifications through CDCS. Instead, we're going to ask that all people whom are eligible and accessing home modifications and vehicle modifications that be used as a traditional service and not bundled within their CDCS plan.
Okay, Caleb, so you're pausing there, and I see Dr. Kate's hand, so I don't know if this is a new hand or from a beforehand. Okay, I see the hand down, but not unmuting, so I think it's from beforehand. Questions of clarity. Not asking whether you agree or disagree, but what's unclear about this? Linda Fairchild.
So will the adaptions, it said that environmental adaptions and transportation modifications will only happen in the individuals. It'll no longer be part of under the residential side. So if a home needs to be adapted or a vehicle needs adaptions for the person, that is no longer part of it.
I think I need a little bit more there, Linda.
So can you go back to that slide?
Yep, I sure can. And then I need a little bit of clarity. Are you suggesting that somebody is accessing family residential services and needs a vehicle or a home mod?
Well,
Right.
so currently you could access adaptations to your home. So as part of the waiver, but I just wanted to make sure I was understanding that environmental accessibility adaptations will only exist in the individual support waiver.
Correct.
Okay.
That is true. Yep. So yes.
So
home
you
and vehicle-
wouldn't pay for them in a provider controlled setting is what I think you're asking, Linda.
Yes.
When, well, first, sorry to interrupt, but that's what I was understanding. You're gonna say, so you wouldn't be giving money to providers to adapt their houses to make them accessible or to have like vans and pay for vans to be adapted. Is that accurate?
That is a great question. Thank you. That helped me. There is a nuance about the. I shouldn't say a nuance. There is an explanation about this that I don't have at my fingertips, but I believe in short the answer is yes. That if someone on a residential support waiver and in one of these settings needs a home or a vehicle modification, there is a different route that we need that to happen. And I don't have all the details, but I will. I can. That's great for me to take back. I can get back with you on that.
Because
So
in customized living and integrated community supports, they might need, because they're not a provider owned entity, so they might need modifications. So I want to make sure that if they're living in their own customized living situation under that RSW, that they're still getting access for those things so that the family can take them on outings and things.
This is great. This is so important. So we captured it. I think Calla captured it. I have it in my notes. So if your hand is up to sort of +1 that, you can just sort of say, let me know +1. Like I hear Calla catching the ball. We need to like refine that, clarify that. That might be a to do. Okay. Chris, were you a +1? I'll say, okay. Dr. Kate, are you weighing in?
Yeah. And this is Barb, her mom, just because we got a new van and she's on CDCS and it required $5,000 out of her waiver budget to go toward the adaptations on the new van. So I don't understand how this is working if it's now going someplace else.
So that's another thing I should probably maybe help to explain. That individuals come Waiver Reimagine go live, individuals will be able to access both CDCS and traditional services simultaneously. We've referred to it, and I don't know if this is how it's in the reports, but at least within the project team and in conversation, some our shorthand reference has been there's an opportunity to mix and match, meaning that moving forward in Waiver Reimagine, individuals will be able to use CDCS to help self-direct, whether that's budget and or employer authority, but they will also have access to traditional services that they aren't required to have budget or employer authority over. So in that example, Dr. Kate, I might say that, Dr. Kate, if you want to access CDCS, you may use some or of your budget to allocate to CDCS that you want to self-direct, then in addition to that, there will be another traditional service, EAA in this case, so the environmental accessibility adaptation, to authorize a vehicle mod. So both will be able to be accessed simultaneously. Did that help
Will
at
that
all?
come out of her, will that come out of her total budget? Or is it outside of budget and traditional services will pay for the whole thing?
Great question. Can we get to that in a little bit? Because in and out of budget is coming up.
Next part of the program here.
Next part. Are we okay with that?
Katrine, I saw a thumbs up from Dr. Kate's box, so I'm going to ask you to lower your hand unless you have another question, Dr. Kate. Katrine.
Yeah, one major difference between CDCS and traditional would be, or what ends up forcing a number of participants on traditional, is the uncapped waivers or the ability to extend PCA hours or services. So it sounds like a major change under Waiver Reimagine is that traditional, in the sense that most people know it, being the uncapped waivers, will no longer essentially exist. Am I correct?
I think I need further. Well, there will be limits on the amount of money that we do allocate to people. Correct. That's what the objective of the individual budget range is based upon your needs, general support needs, medical health, or psychosocial emotional needs. We will assign people a budget. Did I get at that, Katrine?
Yeah, so there will be traditional service categories, but essentially traditional waivers, which many define as being uncapped waivers, will no longer be a thing.
Correct.
Thank you.
Kala, I'm not sure I understand exactly what's being discussed here just because of who I am. And Katrina, I'm going to ask you to lower your hand in case you have another question. But my spidey sense says that people really interested in what are they going to have to pay for out of their allocated money and what are people going to have, or might they have access to for additional funds. Do you think that's a correct read of the room, Kala?
Yes, I'd say, yeah, to expand on what I heard Katrine say is there will be limits on what people are able to access, and that's the goal of the individual budget, but there will also be services outside the budget where you can access a service without using the money that's allocated to you.
I guess where I'm going is I think people want the next part of your conversation because I feel like that's where the itch is.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go here. So my sharing feels a little wonky. I apologize for this. Can you all see me again now?
Yeah. And it is wonky. So it's not you.
Okay. Just how it works. Okay. So we're going to transition now. Second part, Waiver Reimagine in and out of budget. So again, we can come up with, and would love to hear, maybe not today, but would love just generally to hear if there's other ways to characterize this concept, please let us know, because there are different words certainly that we can use that are more intuitive and resonate a little bit better. But in and out of budget, for sake of this conversation, that's how I'm going to refer to things that are inside of the budget. Include services that are subject to and paid for within a person's individual budget range. The antidote of that, or the opposite of that, is things that are outside of the budget. And services that are outside the budget are excluded from the individual budget range and they are funded separately. Services outside the budget typically meet this criteria. And usually all of these criteria, I should say. That one, when looking at utilization of services within our CADI-CAC BIDD participants today, that generally speaking, few people or very few people access that service. And again, what we've looked at to help support this is HSRI has helped us to understand, using fiscal year 2025 data, they have helped us to analyze what is our utilization and our authorization of services and look at both of those numbers. Also, things that are outside the budget are things that have a high cost. So services that have a rate that are high, that's high, that there is a medical or professional need or needs for that service. And that, and mostly that's kind of in clinical, in clinical nature, that there's some clinical aspect of that need or that service. And then the fourth criteria is that we DHS, the state, have the proper controls in place at the time of go live. And so what I mean by controls, what we've been looking at specifically is, one, is there an assessment that helps to determine eligibility? And or are there within the service structure, are there some parameters as to when, how, and how much a service can be authorized and or utilized?
Kala, I'm gonna have you stop for a second and just use my like simple brain here. And that last one, I think maybe its own conversation almost separately in this body. But if I'm understanding what you're saying, if I'm qualified on a waiver, I will have my budget, right? And I will get my budget. But then if I meet other criteria, there may be services that are accessible to me that fall outside that budget. And if I understand correctly, that is essentially increasing my available budget. Is that a reasonable interpretation of that?
Sure, I think that's fair. I think what it would suggest is that services that meet these criteria aren't in competition with other services.
Okay.
It reduces the trade-offs or the trade-offs that could occur for services inside the budget.
Okay. So first I'm going to go to Linda Fairchild, and then I'm going to go to Linda Wolford, and I'm going to keep wondering why you always tag team each other.
I'm going to take this down so I
It's
can
a
see
Linda
you
thing.
all. Sorry.
Linda Fairchild.
My question is, so is the budget just a dollar amount, and then you, the person, the facility, whatever, decides how you're going to use that dollar amount, whether it's staffing, it's whatever the needs are for the person? So it's just a dollar amount, kind of like how CDCS is right now? Or is it give you different dollar amounts for staffing or administrative? How does the budget break down? Or is that further, I just jumping ahead?
Sure. So Linda, I'm going to take your context and suggest that are you speaking from a family residential services provider perspective? I think that would help me.
Yes, for right now, I
Okay.
have a budget, but I know that when I go to the frameworks, I will have just a dollar amount. So that dollar amount, then I determine how I will use that. So this kind of sounds more like that.
Correct. So the individual budget range that's assigned to people is going to be a range. It's going to be two values where that suggests that most people with needs similar to you who are accessing similar services to you. And when I say similar services, I mean in the context of those four services, ICS, FRS, CRS, and CL, this is how much money we are going to allocate to you. And a reminder that that money is being driven off of utilization and authorization trends using fiscal year 2025 data that help to support how much money we want to authorize to people. And so the individual budget range is going to be assigned to a person, and a person is going to be able to make a decision about how they choose to spend that money. And then, Linda, I think in the context of family residential services, you'll continue to use you just said what this was, a rate sheet, I think, if I got the word right. Yep. Rate sheets will still exist, and rate sheets will be the totality of the needs or the level of support that a person needs and help to identify what's the total amount of money. And then that money, that rate that's assigned for somebody to access family residential services through you, will then need to fit within that total individual budget range that's assigned to a person.
So it essentially is just a budget, and from there you determine its use.
Correct. Yep, it's money. Yeah.
Can I
Two values.
talk, Kala? That's sorry to jump in. I think for this question is there's a lot of nuance too because we're still waiting for CMS pending for family, with family residential care, with the tier moving to a tier rate, right? If we're at this, if we are going into the speed or the pace or the directions right now set by pending on CMS, even with Waiver Reimagine for families foster care, family residential care or foster care, family foster care, you will still use your because we're moving to a tier rate. So in the individual, what the individualized budget that Kala talked about, it will still feed into how you're doing the framework right now, but in that tier rate. And then for residential community residential services, we're still using the DWRS. So I think the rate piece is still the same as what we're doing right now.
But
And
down
what
the road, it would go to just a budget, regardless of which 4 areas you live in.
So I want to offer one piece of clarity there. So there is likely to be, we do not know this for certain yet. HSRI will help us to better understand. They need to do a deeper dive and cut into integrated community supports as well as customized living. They've helped us to understand already utilization around community residential services and family residential services. But there is likely to be 4 different budget ranges that are assigned depending on which of those 4 services are accessed.
Okay.
So a person's support range 1, 2, 3, 4, L, H, or E, plus which service they're accessing, which one of those 4, family residential, ICS, CRS, or CL, will then come to an individual budget range that gets assigned. We're waiting on more information about that, so that is not solid, but that is what we are anticipating at this time, that each of those 4 services on the residential support waiver will amount to a different budget assigned to a person based upon their 1, 2, 3, 4 L, H, or E.
So I got a bunch of hands. So in a minute, I've got Linda Wolford, I've got Chris, and then I've got Jenna. But Cal, I want to honor kind of what you're saying is like, let's hold this framework gently right now. It is still being finalized. And so it's probably beyond a draft, but it's still in its concept phase and it's not in ink yet. And so let's make sure that we give the whole system a little elbow room on this. Okay. Linda Wolford.
Yes. On your last slide, Kella, that you went over, there was that number 4. And I work really good or best when I get examples. Could you give an example on that last slide that you showed of what you mean by have it in place before? I was trying to imagine what services you might be talking about. So if you just give me a couple of examples of what you're looking at, that would be helpful for me.
Perfect. I'm going to spitball examples. I'll give you one example. Extended home care nursing. Extended home care nursing right now is not determined using an evaluation or an assessment tool. It also, right now in the current service structure under extended home care nursing, we have no limitations around how it can or can't be used as it relates to the number of units or hours that a person can access. So without any further guidance or any further structure that's built within home care nursing today, that's an example. That same logic could apply to extended CFSS. And you'll notice a trend here, and we'll talk about this in just a second. But extended CFSS. Also, there is no tool that helps to determine how much someone is eligible for extended CFSS. Additionally, there's no limits or criteria or guidance that we've produced around how you would know how much extended CFSS someone is eligible for. And those things are not planned to be in place on or by go live, or at least what was 1/1/27. So I saw a heart up, Linda, and I'm thinking that makes
No,
sense.
that totally makes sense. That's very helpful. And my understanding, if this is still probably true, that people have to access the least expensive services first, that you have to look at that, right? I mean, at what meets your needs, but would be most cost effective, I think is the right word.
Yeah, Linda, let's we'll talk about that and we'll get to that when we talk and bring in HSRI in April, but we'll start to get into what were some of the if you will, guardrails, guiding principles, facts. I don't know, what were some of the we believe statements that DHS had to put in place to help further progress the development of the methodology. How did DHS, and we'll get into this in April, but some key
Sure.
pieces that said, hey, how are we going to know how to best input some of those data and some of those details into the methodology to create a final budget? So we'll get to that, Linda, and that's a but you are highlighting that as one of them. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That helps a lot. Thanks so much.
Fran, you're back already, but we have Jenna next on deck for question.
So I'm not sure if this really got answered or not, but I'm wondering about what was CAC and home care nursing. Is that like inside the CDCS budget, outside? How is that going to work for nursing?
We haven't talked about it yet. So you are just one step ahead of me, Cindy. I have not yet shown what services are planned to be inside and outside of budget. So do we want to get there right now?
Go there, take it.
Sure.
Let's go. Okay. I'm going to try to steer my screen again. I'm getting better at this, I think. Okay, so this is where we left off. I'm going to go from current slide and I'm going to advance. So on the right-hand side is the chart or the table. The table demonstrates what services will be outside or are planned to be outside the budget. Again, that people can access these services without tapping into the bucket of money that individual what is it called? Individual budget range without tapping into that bucket to pay for the services. They're in alphabetical order. There is no rhyme or reason. I just took them by columns and went alphabetically down column 1, into column 2, and into column 3. I'll read them aloud, but a reminder, there are other services that aren't these services, and the other services that you don't see here would require use of an individual budget range to purchase the services. So starting in column 1, going from top to bottom, we have assistive technology, case management aid, also known as paraprofessional, crisis respite, employment development, employment exploration, employment support, environmental accessibility adaptations, positive supports, specialist services, specialized supplies and equipment, transition services, regular, and I'm going to emphasize regular home care services, including skilled nurse visit, home health aid, CFSS, community first services and supports, and home care nursing. Don't mind my parenthesis there. That's a typo. And then also outside the budget are regular home care therapies, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. I just noted them like this because they are not typically authorized and they are not planned to be authorized on a waiver service agreement, but they are allowable and they can happen outside. They are allowable while a person's on a waiver and they can be done outside the budget. So again, what you don't see here means that if it's not here, it means that it is planned to be inside the budget. And then I wanted to emphasize this as well. And this, Linda Wolford, your question, that's why I used the example I did to answer your question around the current, how did I refer to it? The proper controls in place at the time of go live, that extended home care services for many of them, as well as our extended home care therapies, do not have controls in place that either help to determine the eligibility for extended home care services or extended home care therapies. Likewise, we also don't have any limits currently in the service structure. The only other thing that I will emphasize is that currently employment support does not have some limits or some guardrails about when and how much can be used, but we are building that in time for Waiver Reimagine go live. I'll pause there.
Please, Lisa.
So just for understanding, the previous slide that said environmental accessibility adaptations were only available on the individual support waiver. But this slide suggests that it might be available sort of through either.
No, I would rephrase that a little bit. That's a good question. So environmental accessibility adaptations are going to be only available to people who are on the individual support waiver. And once they're on the individual support waiver and accessing EAA, people aren't going to have to use their budget to pay for it.
Okay. And I think that's largely a good thing. I think that my concern is maybe back to this piece, Kala, that you were going to take back. So that's a perfectly understandable response here. But like, we do have situations where to meet the needs of a specific individual who may be wanting admission to a provider controlled setting, the provider needs to install things like plexiglass windows or needs to make some accommodations to the physical structure to make it functional and accessible for that person to receive services in that setting. I just want to make sure that we're not eliminating that process or an avenue or a mechanism to be able to do that, because currently we have people who are sitting in hospitals boarding for months upon months upon months waiting for some of those things to get done under the current structure. And I just want to make sure that whatever we do here, we're not creating additional delays, and we've got some forward thinking to proactively prevent situations that would create barriers to people to be admitted to a provider of their choice who's willing and able to serve them. We just need some changes to the environment to make it safe to do so.
Yeah, Lisa, can I ask just 2 key follow-ups? Is it true that, or is it always true that those individuals let me ask it a different way. Are those people open to a waiver at the time of the need for the environmental accessibility adaptation? Or could there be some that are open, some that are not? Help me understand the nuance.
I think it potentially might depend on the length of their hospitalization. In some cases, whether they had a waiver open that now has closed and needs to be reopened. But there could be situations where the person was open to a waiver upon being admitted from, let me walk you through this example. A person is being served by provider A. Something happens that creates a concern for that provider A's ability to meet the health and safety needs of this individual, or maybe the person needs hospitalization for a period of time. While the person is in the hospital, provider A has determined that they're no longer willing to serve this individual. And so the case management team, potentially the complex transition team at DHS, people are getting involved to say, what do we need to do to find a new service provider willing and able to meet this person's needs? Provider B is approached and says, sure, we'd be willing to do that, but we can't do so safely until we have these changes made to the physical environment in the home. That might be a ramp, that might be stronger doors and windows, that might be any number of different things specific to that individual's specific need, and everybody on the team agrees that that's necessary. There's checks and balances in that process. I just want to make sure that if we're doing it through something other than EAA or sort of the traditional home modification process that we have right now, that we're not losing an avenue to be able to meet those individuals' needs and forcing us to rely on a different payment structure that is untested and clunky and could contribute to additional delays in people being able to receive services in the most integrated setting.
Yep, perfect. I got it. That was helpful to me. Thank you for that.
That's great. I've got Mike and then I have Chris.
Hi, just a quick question about if you go back to your chart, crisis respite and positive supports. Can you describe what is included in that? So is it
Oh,
things
I'd have
like
to. Yeah, keep going. I have to
is
look
it
it up.
things like clinical expertise? So, you know, master's in behavior analysis, PhD psychologist, psychiatrist, APRN, MSW, and the technical staff would be implementing interventions?
If you don't mind, I think I can answer that question because I was formerly on the positive supports team at DHS.
Okay.
So those our team did that I was on. So there are 3 classifications of positive supports to follow the positive supports rule, where someone is in danger of having to use restraints, either manual or mechanical. And those, there's only a few, and they're monitored by the External Program Review Committee, EPRC. And so what they try to do is get people in there who have various ranges, and there aren't many. They're trying to increase people getting into that field, but to help people with that process of being less self-injurious, let's say, less self-injurious behaviors, so that they're not harming themselves. And so getting interventions, as it kind of sounds, so to make sure that individuals aren't in danger, and trying to incent people because the pay was so low. They were trying to get more people to go into those fields to help those individuals learn techniques and behaviors so that they less self-harm, and also then they're less costly in the system, because sometimes those folks, I mean, I was on that team, we had 3-to-1 staffing. That's what it took to stop somebody from injuring themselves or pulling out a feeding tube, for example. So you're
Okay.
looking at some of the people that are most significantly impaired. Largely that came from formerly state hospitals, which you know about, Mike, I know. So
Yep.
does that help with answering that question? Because
Does.
we were kind
Thank
of leading that stuff. And the same with crisis respite was for families to who are in crisis, to find homes for people in crisis, to be able to go to that whose needs, high need people could go there to give the family a break, who might be, taking care of those folks, and to give those folks a break, but that the people are trained again to be able to de-escalation techniques, for example. So I hope that's helpful.
I see an okay coming from Mike, so that's awesome. Thank you. I've got Chris and then Dr. Kate.
Hi, thank you. I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So if the home care nursing is not counted as in the budget, it's outside the budget. Does that, twofold question here, does that require me as a user then to use a home care agency to use those funds, or to access those funds? So in order for home care nursing, I would have to use an agency. Is that correct?
It requires us to use an enrolled provider, which can include an independent contractor as long as they have what we call an MPI, or a provider number.
Okay,
So it could include a person of their own. It could include, include a person employed on their own as an independent contractor, but enrolled.
Okay, so as an RN, I don't believe that I'm allowed to have an NPI. I don't think I'm an eligible provider for NPI. And forgive me if I'm wrong. That's just been my understanding in the past, and I can Google that. But I don't believe RNs can have an NPI number. I believe it's a higher level of licensure,
Credentials.
for the lack of thank you for the word. I couldn't find it. So just as an example, kid with a CAC waiver, my budget may be $200,000 currently. And if I'm going, and that is to allow for home care nursing, but home care nursing, if I run it through an agency, is going to cost approximately $360,000 a year just for nursing. That's nothing else in the budget. So if I'm going to take those funds out and you're not going to use them in my budget, then my budget is going to drop down to whatever. Maybe I'm not understanding this right. I want to make sure that we're meeting the needs. So where am I failing at this, Kala? Because I feel like the Ware amendment allowed us to not count the money. for nursing. But now I feel like I'm not understanding this or we're not honoring that. I'm lost. I thought I
Yes.
got it, now it's gone.
No, you're all good. So home care nursing is planned to be outside the budget, meaning that if I'm hearing you correct, Chris, and what your example was, you'll be able to still do what's called like a mix and match, access CDCS using the money that was assigned.
Yeah.
That'll be in, right? The individual budget range will assign a
Yep.
bucket of money. You'll be able to use
Yep.
that for CDCS. If you want to use home care nursing as well, that can be used as a traditional service, authorized, and not tap into that bucket of money that was assigned. So both can exist simultaneously.
Okay, so if I want to use my $200,000 a year and I want to pick my own nurses, so I may do the private duty nurse line. That in or out? Tell me. I want to best understand, and I'm sorry I'm not grasping it, Calab, but I want to have the best information.
Yeah, so we're planning for it to be outside the budget. So whether it's an agency or an independent contractor, if it's an enrolled nurse or if the nurse works for an employed agency, that can be done outside the budget. What I'm hearing you say, though, that I'm unfamiliar with is that RNs aren't eligible to be a Minnesota healthcare.
Okay, so let's stop that. Let's
enrolled.
percolate that one because that's it. I think that like let's take these in parts. So let's not worry about the RN being MPI approved yet. We'll loop back around to that. So Chris, what do you understand so far?
I understand that if I have nursing, extended care, if I have home care nursing and it's through an agency, that's outside the budget. So I don't need to care that they're making $105,000 profit just to push bill. That's your worry now. I'm putting that on your plate. But if I hire a nurse through a private duty nurse, that what I'm understanding is that potentially could be outside the budget if they're a licensed provider. But my understanding as a nurse, to be a licensed provider, I have to be through an agency that pays. The accessibility is not available. There's a huge staffing shortage. So the way that many of us have robbed Peter to pay Paul is we have plugged in other providers because there are not any available or it exceeds our budget. So I want to be really succinct in it.
So I think we should take it offline, like Fran said, but I will make a couple key things about DHS's intent because I think this is important. When it comes to home care nursing and home care nursing eligibility, our interest or our intent, what our goal is to ensure that those services are used for what they were assessed for.
Sure.
Meaning that if people are eligible for home care nursing, that it be used for home care nursing.
For sure.
The second piece is that in doing so, our great interest is to have home care nursing authorized as outside of CDCS. That's probably the best way I can say that. Outside of CDCS to ensure that whomever is providing the home care nursing, that they are eligible to be providing that.
Can you give me a for instance of what that means to you, that a person using a service that wouldn't, I want to best understand that, Kala.
Yeah, so maybe I can tell you what I think happens today sometimes. So what happens, what we happen sometimes today that we're hoping that we want to do something different is a person is determined eligible for home care nursing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make this up, 8 hours a day. It is also then that when eligible for 8 hours a day of home care nursing, for whatever reason, that the person is choosing to use that home care nursing eligibility through CDCS, right? And then it's happening where we're not sure now that it's lumped in or bundled to CDCS, we're not sure how that service is being used. We've lost controls on if nursing is actually being done with that eligibility.
Okay.
Because it's
now
now
I
being,
understand.
it's getting bucketed in with CDCS, and now we've lost our controls about, is it being offered by a home care nurse? Was it determined eligible through an assessment?
Okay,
that-
so now I understand what you're saying. So what I want to just make sure that we're moving forward is that when I hire a private duty nurse, an independent contractor, because I am trying to save that $105,000 a year that the home care agency is skimming to push bill. Okay. So I hired same nurse as an independent contractor. That costs you $105,000 less a year, but I still got the same thing. I had to provide the liability insurance. I had to provide a 485. I had to show that this was a nurse and I had to show all of her credentials. So I want to make sure I can still do that because I'm meeting my kid's needs. I'm keeping him out of the hospital. I have a nurse and I save DHS I'll use a nice word, crap ton of money to make sure that his needs were met. And it sounds like that is going to be taken away from me. And then I'm forced back to use nurses that I wouldn't hire traditionally.
Okay, so I want to jump in here. The complexity and the nuance of this, I think we're not going to be able to give it the amount of time and thoroughness that we want to have in this conversation. So I'm not stepping over it, but I'm just thinking that this is not the time for us. And Kella, I want to give you all DHS time to sort of think about it comprehensively and not be sort of put on the spot this way. I'm also concerned that because this is a public meeting, that people are going to hear pieces of it and it's either going to be scary or not scary depending upon what they hear. So I feel like this is one of those I think we want to land more mindfully. So Chris, are you okay if I do that?
I'm not, but I respect you enough to give it up. But this is scary. This does impact our kids. This is a big
Totally.
expletive deal, and I'm not going to drop this.
I want
Because
to be careful. I'm not asking you to drop it. What I want us to do is have the right focused people in the room and really clarify this.
I don't like it.
Okay. I'll be open to other suggestions, but I'm also concerned about this feels like an important area of specialty, and I want to make sure that we have everybody's topics and needs met here. More.
I feel like I might be at risk repeating what Fran just said, Chris. I've been listening, and I think those questions that you raised are very valid concerns and questions, great questions that would need a little bit more time and consult with our home care policy team too. This is we're just touching the surface, right? This is just the surface of what a lot of things that we will be able to encounter, experience as we peel the onion. So appreciate your flexibility and just for us to take it back.
I respect that. I totally do. I respect where you're coming from. I just don't want it to drop because it's a huge part of this. And so hopefully delaying Waiver Reimagine will then give that opportunity to lend to it. So thank you.
Chris, the promise I will make for you is I will get with you, Calla, more if other folks want to be a part of that. And I'll try to get something in the books within the next 2 weeks for us to huddle on this specific topic. So if that doesn't happen I'll send some meeting pings out, by tomorrow morning.
Respectfully, my son is having his 26th surgery next week. So my window's little.
Then you tell me, like offline, you can tell me when you want us to do it, and then we'll get it in place. No problem. I've got Dr. Kate, and then I have Katrine.
What if the rules for, like assistive tech, don't meet a person's needs? What are the options?
Kala.
What I heard, what are the rules for assistive tech and how are we in?
What if the rules for like assistive tech don't meet a person's needs? What are the options?
I think that's a bit out of scope. I mean, that's really about service delivery. So I feel like that's a little bit out of scope for this conversation about what's covered, like the service structure, about what's covered and not covered within services. So I'm not prepared to speak to that right now, Dr. Kate, because a reminder, we're trying not to change what's covered and not covered within each service today. But if we need to, we can take that offline. That hasn't surfaced much within our project team. We're not, with the exception of a few services, CDCS employment supports will be 2 of them. There may be a little bit of other services we have to touch off, but we're not planning to touch how services work today.
We can take that offline, Kala, because there are some concerns about it, but they're more personal.
Yeah, that's fair. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kate. Katrine. You are muted if you're talking. There we go.
Hi there. My question or concern really was geared more towards the issue about nursing access and the Ware Amendment. But I can pivot slightly. There is a statute, an amendment in place that says that nursing must or should be able to be self-directed within the budget, and the reason for it is because there are no nurses. And DHS has the obligation of ensuring access to these nurses. There are very few agencies that will even accept adults as clients. So there are no nurses. And so what families need is access to the nursing budget so that they can self-direct the budget. And I don't understand DHS's concern that the services have to be provided by, the qualified professional if there aren't any. Then you have to ensure that the qualified professionals are available before you make limitations that place participants at very, very high risk of institutionalization and hospitalization. So in a general sense, we could pivot and just say this can be applied across the board in other areas, not just the nursing amendment. There is an obligation to ensure access to the providers and the services.
Thanks for that, Katrine.
Perfect. So this is just showing the richness of this conversation. So that's where I think it needs, right, that complexity. Katrina, I'm going to ask you to lower your hand, if you will. Okay. So based upon our conversation so far, Katrina, did you have another point or there we go. Thank you. Based upon our conversation so far, as I promised you, I wanted to do this methodically. So Keller, did we get your last slide? Did we cover?
Yep, sure did. And I actually have to hop. I think the only other thing I would just like to share is that extended home care services, including extended home care nursing, are planned to be inside the budget. So I just want to just re-up that was written on the slide, but I don't think I verbalized that. So we'll take the home care nursing conversation offline, but I'm going to sign off, but I'm going to pass it over to Moore. The slide deck is over and just curious about more feedback. So thank you.
Perfect. So Moore, you're wearing 2 hats right now, maybe 3. So in terms of being methodical, what about what you just heard is landing well and is positive? And then once we generate that list, I will change gears and we'll talk about any additional areas of concern. But let's just stay in the positive space right now. What are you hearing that is landing well? Gretchen, please. If you're talking, you're not.
Sorry, I should have been quicker.
No problem.
I just appreciate seeing a framework for us to at least start these discussions. I appreciate Calla staying here beyond. I think she had to leave at 3:45, answering some questions, but at least we can see a framework to begin tough conversations and moving us forward with the information we were presented with earlier today on the delay.
Thanks, Gretchen. Lisa, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just really appreciate sort of being looped into this process with the acknowledgement that these are not fully formed, set in stone ideas. We're still in kind of the messy middle of figuring it out. But I also want to just reiterate my appreciation for the emphasis that nothing we have today is going away. It might be packaged differently, we might navigate it differently, but the existing services are not being winnowed down such that there's winners and losers in the process, and it won't exist in the future.
Thank you. What else is landing well? Mike?
Yeah, I think that the description that Linda Wolford gave about crisis services and the array, which is borne out by the experience DHS has in their current efforts, that is a critical set of services to achieve outcomes and get people, as Lisa points out of emergency departments, divert people from hospitalizations. So that's a positive aspect of this so far.
Perfect, that's great. Linda Wolford.
I think that it was just really good to see the thoughtfulness, I think, that went into that document, and thinking about what's in, what's out, what's provider, more provider controlled settings and individual settings, all seems to be kind of coming into place. And it feels like they have a really good handle and have given a lot of thought to this. That tells me they're on the right track, and also mindful that people's budgets, we're getting more into that next time, but that they're already thinking about what things could drain budgets, right? And that they're pulling them out so that people aren't so fearful about not being able to make it on the budgets they're given, because some of those services will be covered independently under traditional services. So I was happy to see that.
Perfect. Anything else that's landing well? Trying to keep track of multiple things here. Okay, so we have already identified a number of areas of either concern or needing more clarity. So I'm not going to have the jargon right, but I'm going to do my best that way. So the things that Linda Fairchild raised related to residential services and EAA, right? That it's not a, it's a both end. The point that Callum made about services as controls become available, to me, is like an open thing that needs to land. And Maura and Adrian, I'm kind of watching you. If I really mess this up, jump ahead of me. The private nursing and qualified professionals and MPI and that whole piece, the Ware amendment, that sort of falls into a bucket that I don't have the problem question on yet, but I do have a number of people that have already said they want to be a part of that conversation, including Chris, Mike, Calla, Moore, and Lisa. So I want you to hear that I caught the ball on that for the folks that already pinged me.
Dr. Kate too.
Oh, perfect. Great. Excellent. I have the adaptive technology question. That's a specific question. I think those are the ones that I captured as I was listening to you. What are the other areas of concern or consideration? Chad?
Yeah, I just had a question for clarity. So I assume after you have those offline conversations, if people can't attend, you'll report back to the rest of the group as far as what was generally discussed. I just didn't want to assume and be incorrect. So great.
Absolutely. Let us do the sausage making and get those things clarified, and we can bring them forward. No problem. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Linda Wolford.
There you go. I don't think we caught this, but we talked about it at the beginning. Still, there's questions around the assessment and questions about, like getting cost estimates or how
Yep.
that might affect the process. Just wanted
Yep.
to not lose track of that.
Yep. I have that on a different part of the conversation, Linda, as an action item coming out of that. So that's great. Yep. Perfect. Chad, unless you have another question, I'm going to ask you to lower your hand. Other concerns or things we could change to make it even better? Perfect. Thank you for this. This was, Linda Fairchild, please. You're following Linda Wolford, of course.
I think that next month will be a telling month because budgets are so essential to everything that will help us understand better how the flow will be. So I'm anxious to see how that will go and that interconnection between how they're perceiving the budgets to go and what is the exact impact that min choices will have into that. So,
Okay, let me make a note. I also want to be clear. I want to definitely expectation set. The April conversation is about budget logic. We will not have budget numbers for that. So we'll understand how they're being derived and what the considerations are. And then the actual numbers recalibrated will be later into the summer. Perfect. Dr. Kate. Nope, you're muted, my friend. Sorry.
Well, her algorithm doesn't work for HSRI. She says HSRI data will help.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some of the pieces are starting to come together. So hopefully we'll see a more complete picture than we've had in the past. Other changes or upgrades? Julie, I see you coming live on camera. Are you jumping in? No? Okay. Okay. Perfect. How about a 10-minute break? Just mix things up a little bit, catch some air, and then we'll talk about status of other things, legislation, all of that kind of good stuff. So we'll come back at 1:15. So was the Eagles concert a tribute band? Is that what they were? I don't know if Dr. Kate's there.
Yep, that's what they were. It was really, really fun. They didn't exactly sound the same, but were really close. And probably a third of it was just the instrumentals from the songs. And everybody's in the audience going, it was really fun.
That's awesome. Do you know if are they a national tribute band or are they one of the local ones?
I don't know. I know that the lead singer is from Canada, but I mean, they actually even kind of looked like the Eagles with the long hair and scuzzy. And we've gone to a couple of concerts like that. We went to a Simon and Garfunkel one when we were in London. And that one was really, really cool because the backdrop of it was videos of what was happening at the time those songs were written.
Oh, how awesome is that? And then to be in London?
It was absolutely amazing because I'm old enough. I remember living through those times and I had forgotten how chaotic it was.
Yeah.
Because you're talking late 60s, early 70s. We also saw, we do a lot of theater and music when we're in London. And we did the ABBA concert where they had the music that ABBA sung, but with avatars.
Oh, cool.
It was really cool. And the whole center of the arena was floor space so people could dance. It
I
was
love that.
it was so cool.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Yeah.
So we
You know,
tend to do a lot of that.
I'm a beginning guitarist. I think you might know that. So my guitar teacher lives in White Bear Lake, and is a guitarist for a Simon and Garfunkel tribute band that's local in the state. But the two lead vocalists are women, so they call it Simon and Garfunkel with a twist. And it's just great to sort of hear that music. And I have another.
The guys that did it in London actually looked like Simon and Garfunkel. So one had the Garfunkel hair, and it was really fun. We do a lot of music.
So cool. I have another guitar teacher for when I go to guitar camp, and he is in a national Kiss tribute band. And a few years ago, he committed from having a wig to just having his hair like Ace in Kiss. And so it's kind of and long and so yeah, like I totally get when they look like it, it's awesome.
Tell me what else. Oh, when we go to St. Martin. The other place we go when we go to London is St. Martin in the Fields because they have their own quintet. And they offer concerts throughout the year in the church. And we've gone there a number of times. And the last time we were there, the lead violinist came over and told Kate how much she appreciated having Kate in the audience because she could see the joy of the music brought her in her face.
So great.
And to be acknowledged that way, because you can watch her face and it's like she's totally into the music.
Yeah.
It's usually classical music of some sort. But yeah, we do a lot of, when you're visually impaired, you do a lot of music.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah, we try and do those kinds of things. What did I forget to tell her? Oh, are we still live streaming?
We are still live streaming.
Okay. We have other things to tell you. We'll email you.
Okay. Yeah, and we can set up time to huddle. No problem that way. See where we are. Yeah.
Let me move you back down here.
We've got about 4 more minutes.
Looks like Dr. Kate froze on us.
They do freeze periodically, but then when they speak, it wakes up. So when they unmute, it's very interesting. Maybe having a lot of apps open.
Fran, it's been very, very slow with the muting and the start and stop video, and it's really hard to tell because I've clicked on it for her and then it doesn't do anything, and then it's like, well, did it not get the input, or is it just, it's been kind of hard.
Yeah, I thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry that you went through that. I found the same thing with me, like sharing my screen, and Calla was saying the same thing. So I
Yep,
wonder if it's
same
like a
here.
broader system thing.
Yeah.
Linda Wolford, you had the same thing, right?
Yeah, same thing's happening. That's why when you say mute, it takes about 5 to 10 seconds
Yeah.
before. And I've been on WebEx many times, and this is the worst I've ever seen it behave.
Yeah, feel free though, Dr. Kate and Barbara, too, if it works easier on your side not to send video, just to give you a little more sort of digital bandwidth. I can watch for your hand and I can watch for you to unmute and that kind of thing.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, yeah, happy to do that. No problem.
Do you want to go back to being muted? Oh, okay.
Even now, I have my video on and it's not on, as you can see.
Yeah,
and when I watch my expressions, I'm like, oh my God, that's not how I look. I hope it's like in slow motion. It's weird. But more looks fine.
It really is uncanny how when we freeze in like the most unattractive like expression, right? Like it's like, oh, so crazy. I am going to welcome people back from break. So thank you. Thank you for being here. And I should check my agenda. So want to just do some lightning round, for lack of a better term, around legislation. We touched on that at the start, and sort of strategy with the legislature and what people are hearing. So I'm going to lean a little bit on Julie and Linda Wolford on that, but it's definitely open to everyone. If we've got time, we can talk a little bit about the expert panel. And I don't see Jennifer Ballinger here. She's our representative on the long-term services and supports. So that's another adjacent project to Waiver Reimagine. If anybody wants any brief updates on the task force work groups, I'm happy to talk about that. And then for us to start to do some preliminary planning on our next meeting for April 20th. And then I'll give you the other dates for upcoming meetings. Let me see here. So let's lean into the legislature and legislation. And Julie, I don't know if you've got anything you want to share. Linda Wolford, after that, anything you all want to share?
I'm in the process of trying to schedule a meeting with Senator Hoffman. He's got deadlines this week before break, first deadline. So they're furiously busy in their committee, but I've had some outreach back and forth with his office. So hopefully more to come on that. I did send letters to all of the members of the Human Services on the Senate side. And then I sent an email to Linda. So I'm hoping Linda was able to connect with maybe Rep. Curran or other folks that she was hoping to connect with to learn more on the House side, because my focus, at least to this point, has been more on the Senate side.
Perfect. Linda Wolford, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. Unfortunately, I've been kind of without a computer. And I was sick first before that. The only really person I reached out to that I did follow through with was Senator Abler before all of this began, and told him about the heads up with the letter coming. And then Dr. Kate and I, as you all know, sent the letter out to all of the members and the governor of the both human services committees. But outside of that, no. I have not reached out to anyone. And given what we talked about earlier today with DHS already moving that forward, I'm not sure it's necessary because I don't think that there's any deadlines to any bills that we really have to worry about, right? Or am I wrong in thinking that?
I think the conversation is still good because we don't know what that timeline looks like. So I think we don't have a deadline of this Friday, but the Senator Abler's bill to delay was introduced in a floor session, so it still needs to be heard in committee. So it was referred to the Human Services Committee. One of the things I asked Sam, if you remember, there was a hearing scheduled around waiver reimagine and DHS's report, and they pulled that hearing down earlier and said that they were going to reschedule it. So I'm asking when that committee intends to reschedule that hearing. So I would imagine they'll be on break all week next week. They go out on break Friday, and they're not allowed to have any hearings while they're on break next week. So there'll be 2 weeks once they get back. So sometime in that 2-week period, once they return from break, there will have to be a hearing on the human service side around waiver reimagine and that bill that was introduced.
Yeah, I looked today and it didn't look like it was on the agenda.
It's not, no.
Yeah. So
And I don't expect that it would be before Friday because
no,
different bills are working on for this deadline. So we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah. Nope, I don't know any more than you did, and I didn't know I was supposed to reach out to House of Reps. And by the way, my contract just got done with the council, so I really was not able to do work.
Yeah, and I can reach out to Rep Curran too. I thought you said you had Rep Curran's cell phone number and you were gonna text Rep.
No,
Curran.
that was Representative Hicks.
That was Representative Hicks. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be at the Capitol all day tomorrow, so I might be able to connect with some folks when I'm there.
Julia, that would be super helpful. What else, task force writ large, what else do we need to attend to that way? Katie, based upon your experience with task force working with the legislature, is there anything you would advise?
I think it sounds like we have a good course of action with continuing to reach out. It's kind of an unusual session, I would say, just because of the volume of human services things that are happening all at the same time in a short session. So I think, Julie's work to continue to follow up is probably the best, most important thing.
Perfect. And Maura, is there anything from your lens in DHS that the task force should know about that the task force can help elevate?
No, I not at this very moment. I think it, like I said, it was very helpful to hear some of the concerns earlier and ways that or considerations as we are working to, move into the next phase of like trying to revise the timeline, the go live date, and where are some milestones. So that's a conversation that DHS will continue to have, and go through our chains of decision making parties and different angles. But I think like just in terms of task force here, the conversation with legislature will continue to do that because we also don't know where we're going to land, right? There's a lot of different consideration that we need to really assess, and so yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Maura. Julie, please.
More, I'm just curious. I didn't see this noted in the governor's budget, and I know there would be a budgetary impact. Is this something that happened after the governor's budget was created? Do you know?
Yeah, we need this is part of the assessing too, because we haven't did notice here. It just happened, and so it did not have any and have gone through like the impact, like financial fiscal analysis impact yet. And that's something that would be coming very they will be very interested.
Yeah, that feels important more. And if that's something that, as it can be made public, we can share with the task force. I think that that helps the task force to be more informed in their dialogues with folks. So that's a critical piece of information, I think.
Yes, it is. And it's one of my to-do lists to talk to our budget director, Elise Bailey, who was here before, as we know more and do have a complete analysis of like the impact for the near and long term. What does that mean? And I actually was hoping that I will extend an invite to her and hoping that we can also have her back at the upcoming task force meeting too, because it is impacting um, it will have a huge impact.
Yeah, and I think she's probably somebody that if we asked to have some financial modeling according to the 3 scenarios that Linda Wolford outlined, my guess is that she would be sort of critical in that work. Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. Task force, anything else related to the legislature? Going once? Twice? Okay, so we're gonna call that for now. We'll stay in contact and connection that way. And Julie, thanks for doing so much work on that. Linda, thank you as well for making all that happen, and the co-chairs for getting the letters out. Really great. I'm just going to do a couple of high-end things just because I don't think we've done this yet, and I want to make sure that you all know. So brief updates from the breakout groups, from the task force work groups. So the scenarios work group, who really are there to sort of test drive what the realities might be for people in the new system, include Julie Johnson, Jennifer Ballinger, Chris Erickson, Senator Rasmussen's on it, but we haven't seen him participate, and Jen Olson from DHS and a number of her team members have been coming. And right now, our focus is walking through the budget exception process. What are the criteria? What are the related processes? It's still very much being worked and is in rough draft, but that's the current focus. And then on the horizon for focus will be to walk through transitions between people's homes and congregate care and back to know what needs to be in place and what might those experiences be. We know that there's one concern that Jennifer Ballinger has mentioned, and that is the transition from home to congregate care or to back can sometimes be perceived as like double billing, right? And so let's make sure that things aren't caught in that gap there. So those are some of the conversations that are happening there. The early indicators group, which consists of Katrine, Mike, Heidi was on it, and then 2 folks from DHS data family, Laura Potter and Brittany Pennington. And I realize I don't have a meeting on the books and I need to get that with you all. They've identified a number of like red flag areas where we want to have early indicators, including early indicators related to the degree of informed choice, confirming that people are not shifting to more restrictive conditions or more restrictive settings, early indicators related to budget changes and budget exception processes, and confirming that people are supported or receiving services during time where there may not be an immediate provider. So those are some of the red flag areas that have been identified by that group. The waiver guardrails group, which consists of Linda Fairchild, Jenna Johnson, Moore, and then Charla Sullen from DHS, are focusing on right now 4 areas of guardrails. One is related to what happens when or if residential family service homes close, and what happens with residents or people that are served in that framework. We're looking for guardrails that can and processes that can enable creative solutions. So when families have innovative ways that they want to serve their families, how to sort of have those kinds of solutions possibly work within the existing frameworks. To look at implementing or inviting a process of some sort that falls into the when things aren't working and we need to talk. And so that would include things like not really a case manager meeting and not really an appeals meeting and not an attorney's kind of meeting, but more of a side-by-side discussion. And then guardrails related to budget reductions. And then the policy and practice group, which included Gretchen, Trisha, Meredith, Lisa, and I think a DHS representative, and I currently have Kala on there, but I'm not sure that that's right. Were instrumental in helping to draft and refine the task force letter. And then, as Kala mentioned at the start of the meeting, there is a DHS legislative report that is due. And my hope is that once that's able to leave the nest of DHS, the policy and practice group would be willing to take that on and sort of add the task force lens to those things. So I just went through that really quickly. Does anybody have anything they want to add or any questions about those at all? Lisa, please.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not looking for details here, more of just a yes or no kind of question as these conversations are ongoing and details have yet to emerge. But in some of those work groups, particularly the scenario work group and anywhere we're talking about the budget exception process, are the groups contemplating or considering any due process provisions in there with whatever comes out of that budget determination or budget exception approval or denial?
So I don't speak that language, Lisa. So tell me what, like, put that in more lay terms, if you will. And again, we're not landing anything, we're drafting it and it'll come back to the big group.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm asking is for in those groups as they're thinking through that process, say a budget exception request is declined or not approved. Is there an appeals process? Is there an external review mechanism? Is there something that we can do to ensure that there's some kind of due process consideration in those determinations?
Yeah, that's great. Like I kind of hear of that like as the extra eyes, right? Like, we have not gotten far enough on those processes, but this is great and I appreciate you articulating it. And I draw these little flow charts, not unlike what Kala showed. And so, I have a yes dimension and I have a no angle. And so when I have a no, I have question marks like, okay, then what? Like, what's the next process there? So at least I've flagged it. Please, Linda Fairchild.
So I just want to be clear, is the exception process considered outside of the budgets, or is that a whole separate third entity?
Yep, I do not know more. I don't know if you can speak to this. This is a great Kala question. I have a hypothesis, but more.
So this exception process, if I understanding what the question is if when their individual budget range is not meeting their needs or to support their needs, then they will go through this exception process to request additional like funding or budget so that that can afford the services being provided.
So how is that different than the outside
I
of the budget scenario?
I think they're very aligned. I think they're pretty much,
Okay.
yeah. One is just
Okay.
speaking of some of the process to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more sorry about
Maybe
that.
we need to look at using those terms though, outside/exceptions.
We can in the work groups, but we're in a slightly different
Mhm.
place on
Yep.
this, but more, please.
I think it's very close. It could be, like I said, this is so much nuance. We just like touching the surface, right? And so to answer your questions, out or inside budget, I think it could be both. It could be that it's after you. Yeah, I'm not gonna try like I know what to do, so I'm gonna leave it there, and I have Kala speak to that later on.
But what you're seeing is we're starting to pull these different isolated pieces together and see how they're interrelated. So like this to me is like so critical, and I'm really so excited for all of us to sort of get that picture. Julie, please.
Yeah, we're still working on it, as Fran said, but Linda Fairchild, to answer your question, my understanding when Calla went over it last time is it's an exception to the budget range. So it's not service specific, it's an exception to that budget range.
Brilliantly done, Julie. Thank you. Other questions? Okay. I'm going to keep rolling. I am going to share my screen so that you all can see, and I will talk through all of the content on here. Are you able to see it? I got some nods. I got a thumb up from Katie. Katie Pratt's the official thumb upper that way. Thank you. Thank you, Gretchen. So our next meeting should be on your calendar. It's April 20th from 1 to 5 p.m. And two primary areas of focus, unless today you tell me otherwise. So one is budget methodology and development. So we're intending to have representatives from HSRI as well as DHS folks to sort of have the group understand the logic behind what is being considered. The other thing, and this is because I want to be true to my word, when we all met in, I guess it was December, when we all met face to face. Was that December? God, that feels so long ago, crazy. I had asked whether or not you would be willing to work with interim co-chairs so that we could get a little traction. And we had sort of defined this as the quote unquote sprint phase of the project because the intention was to have the CMS submission, I think at that time in April or May. So we saw that as a time to really try to hit it hard. So our two co-chairs, Dr. Kate and Linda Wolford, are sort of in interim status. And so I had said, can we wait until April to sort of finalize that? So I will have that, unless you tell me otherwise, on that agenda for our April session. And both Linda Wolford and Dr. Kate agreed if we would like them to, they're willing to continue in this role. I'm also open to anybody else that would like to entertain that. And then in April, we will make a decision and make a vote on that. The thing I will say though, I think the conversation with HSRI could be really rich and it could occupy most of our meeting. So if we find that we are having good productive dialogue related to budget methodologies and development, I might just ask that we delay that as an official vote until May, just because I don't want to squeeze another thing if we're making good progress on that. So I just want to be forthcoming that way. So that's a heads up. So if anybody wants to be considered for one of the chair roles, just email me or email Katie, and we will get that pulled together for you all. Then the next meeting I have is May 14th, Thursday, from 1 to 5 p.m. Right now, I don't have a sense of where we're going to want to put our focus on that. It feels like everything's starting to come together. That may be a really good time for us to have the task force work groups report out their current status and get the task force feedback on that. I think there'll be enough things that may be defined enough to have that be a rich conversation. Same for Wednesday, June 4th, 1 to 5. And then I will send out to all of you the next doodle poll for you to weigh in on July meetings. And in fact, I will copy this if I can. And for those of you who have access to the chat, you can grab it there. But I will also send it out in an email to everyone.
You said June 4. The slide says 24, and I noticed I don't have that on my calendar. So is that one an invitation been sent?
Let me see. I do have it as June 24. So if I said 4, I apologize. Let me see if it's on my
Okay.
phone.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I do not believe we've sent out an invite yet for that one.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no, we didn't. That's right. I confirmed it today. So that's the new one. We're landing that one today. So thank you for that. And then July. And let me see where we are here. If people have other agenda items, feel free to email me, email Katie, email the co-chairs, and we can pull that together. But I am starting to land our conversation for today. So our desired outcomes were to get the updates from DHS, to have an overview of the direction on service menus, and then what's in and out of budgets, the status of related legislation, some of the task force efforts, and plan for task force co-chair roles. So I am going to put a note in the chat here. Our goal is always B+, at least. So how did we do today? So if you're comfortable weighing in the chat, great. If you want to unmute and let us know, but give us a letter grade in terms of how we as a task force collective did today, that would be awesome. Got a B, okay, I'll try a little harder. Got a B+, A-, B+, B, B+, awesome. An A, sweet. Feel free to keep loading the chat. I don't want to rush you. And this is super, super helpful. So in the spirit of closing our meeting, I would love to hear from at least 5 of you. What's working for you? And we should keep repeating it. I'm putting my hand up with my 5 fingers showing because it helps me remember and count. I see in the chat, I really appreciate the questions, concerns everyone is bringing forward for DHS to consider, and that's from Moore. So thank you, Moore. Linda Fairchild.
I like that in our small groups, we have a representative from DHS because they can feed us the information. So thank you, Moore.
What else is working?
DHS was open to discussion and listening.
Yeah, so thank you, DHS, for being open for discussion and listening. Gretchen, please jump right in.
I was going to say, I appreciate that we're taking everyone's concerns. We're spending a little time talking about those, but also taking them in another avenue so we can continue to focus and capture and stay to the agenda, because this is a lot. We have a lot to get through, and it's important that people get heard, but we also keep moving forward. So thank you for being a facilitator that can balance and recognize when this is a great discussion, but however, we need to keep moving forward because this is tough stuff. So it's important to hear from everyone, but it's also important to move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I have good days and bad days, so let's be clear, right? Let's get at least one more. What's working?
Can I just say I second that, what Gretchen mentioned?
Sure.
Thank you for keeping us organized and moving forward.
We'll try to keep doing that. I got my fingers crossed on that. Katie, before I open the floor to anybody else that's got closing remarks, Katie, do you have anything you want to add, ask?
Yeah, excuse me. I would just add that I just, first of all, I learn a lot. I love seeing the group process all the information, and this is really technical information. Like there are times I'm like, what is this even about? But by the end, I understand it, and so that speaks to your ability to kind of get on the same language and navigate the nuances and the technical details. So that's really cool. And then I would just say I think the group is doing just a very nice job of sort of holding yourselves accountable to, I recognize that this issue is really important to me, or I have a long line of questions about this, but I also recognize that other people have questions that need to get heard. And so I'm okay pausing, or maybe a little reluctant to pause, but I just appreciate the grace at which people are managing their own experience in the group. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate it. There was a question in the chat about getting copies of the slide decks that were shared by DHS today. I don't imagine that being a problem at all. I'll work with Cal on that. It probably has to go through an accessibility check before it's posted publicly, but we can make sure that that's available. So that is great. All right. I basically consider us done for now. My neighbor just, their granddaughter came down and visited yesterday from the cities and brought me 3 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. So I'll just confess to you that that is my next stop, is to go to my neighbor's house to get my official supply of Girl Scout cookies. Is there anything else that needs to be said by anyone in the room before we call ourselves complete?
Have a wonderful Easter.
Thank you. That's right. Holy smokes. To you as well.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody. And Caroline knows I hear a bit more. If you could let her know, I really appreciated her laying out that process. I think that was really helpful, useful also for John to come in at the beginning. And looking forward to Elise coming in and more you being here, and just all the hard work you do, as well as Adrian. So thank you for the work that you all do. And also Julie at the legislature and everybody, just thanks. And I wanted to also say that I will either not be or will be probably late to the May meeting. My former housemate died, and it's her funeral that morning at 11. And it's been scheduled for months. And when it would have to be on the same day. So I, don't know how long it's at Como. And it's going to be huge funeral. So I don't know. Deb Holt, she used to work at DHS actually, and was my supervisor for a while. So she passed away from cancer, and her celebration of life is that morning at 11. So I don't know what time I'll be back.
Okay, Linda, I'm sorry. So very sorry. And thank you for that, letting us know. Yeah. Anything else that needs to be expressed by anybody? Going once? Twice? Perfect. We will call ourselves adjourned for today. Anna, thank you so much for the technology and accessibility support. Eliane, for your help with notes. Thank you all for your candor and respect and grace. Thank you, Megan, for captioning. And we will see you all in about a month as a task force, and sooner as small groups.
What kind of cookies do you get, Fran?
They got